Welcome everyone. Beautiful to see you. Glad you can join in with us and take the ride today. We are going to have a beautiful healing day. I can just feel it, very strong healing moving through. And the tip-off for me was for some of you that are doing the Course in Miracles lessons along with the calendar. Today is day number 121. So we have such a beautiful Course in Miracles lesson to launch us into this day of healing. And the workbook lesson is forgiveness is the key to happiness. So I thought I would just read the very beginning of that lesson because it's what a beautiful way to launch us all into the day with these beautiful words from Jesus. Here is the answer to your search for peace. Here is the key to meaning in a world that seems to make no sense. Here is the way to safety in apparent dangers that appear to threaten you at every turn and bring uncertainty to all your hopes of ever finding quietness and peace. Here are all questions answered. Here, the end of all uncertainty ensured at last. So, what a beautiful way to begin our day of healing. And our movie poll this week gave us some excellent themes to dive into the healing. And the combined poll of both Spanish and English, the top theme was unworthiness versus embracing the power of the mind. And then in second place, facing abandonment and rejection. And then in third place, letting myself fall apart. Are you ready to join me in that today? Letting myself fall apart. If your friends or neighbors said, "What did you do on Saturday?" I was just watching a movie and letting myself fall apart. And then finally, letting go of the belief in sacrifice. So that's a big one. That's a big one for healing. So the movie that we have is going to allow us to go through and into the depth of healing with those themes is the original What the Bleep movie. I believe it was from like 2004. And I like a movie that has character transformation. It has a bit of a plot, which is healing and spiritual awakening, and it also has a lot of beautiful teachings on quantum physics, which I think is a modern day term for forgiveness. Back in the time of Jesus, there was no quantum physics as we know it today. That's more of a 1900s and 2000s philosophy and science that has come along. But some of you have heard about my book, Quantum Forgiveness, Physics Meet Jesus. I had a friend in Europe who was not too happy with that title. She called me and she said, "Why does physics need to meet Jesus?" And she was going to translate my book, and so I said, "Well, it doesn't have to, but I think it would be a fun meeting. And then she actually did quite a few chapters, but then the file got lost or corrupted. So there was some resistance, which is not unusual in Europe, considering the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition, and there was a lot of things that happened in Europe that were kind of like, no, that we don't like that brand of God or Jesus. Science, so quantum physics. But I feel like, in one sense, that the quantum field that is pointed to by quantum physics is the same as the happy dream or the forgiven world, and Jesus, is the representation, is that experience. So it's kind of just a joke. Physics meet Jesus. It's kind of catchy, though, you have to admit. But they've already met. In fact, they've never been apart. Any of you who know physics and have gone deeply into physics, know that it points to the nature of the connectedness, that it's all energy and it's all connected, and it's all one. It's all unified. And of course, that's what Jesus points to, and all profound spiritual pathways and philosophies all point to the same place. So we don't have to worry about them meeting. They've never been apart. They're the same one. And this movie is good because it starts to give you a flavor of some of these beautiful quantum teachings in the context of relationship and healing. So I think a lot of times people think of science and spirituality as somehow being kind of divorced, or they're just different categories that talk about different aspects of our experience. But I found that the deeper I went, everything was connected, and I was quite delighted by the teachings of quantum physics. There was a quantum physicist from Australia, his name was Paul Davies. I remember reading something that he was writing, and basically he came out with the words in his book, "There is no world." And I was like, yes, identical to A Course in Miracles, Lesson 132. Word for word, from a quantum physicist and from Jesus in A Course in Miracles. And I said, of course, they're talking about the same thing, that what seems to be a physical world isn't really physical. It's just a projection of images, and it seems to, in distorted perception, it seems to take on a solidity, and that's where we have an interesting word called matter. And basically, quantum physicists are saying matter isn't what it seems to be. It's not really a thing. It's like a potentiality, and it's basically, in Course in Miracles terms, it's a perception, and perception is not reality. Images are not the light that is beyond the images, and matter actually doesn't matter. I was thinking about that the other day, that matter doesn't matter because it isn't the unified spirit, and that is what matters, so to speak. That's what's important, is the light that we are, not what we appear to be in this distorted world. So I like a movie that shows healing going on. The actress Marlee Matlin is playing our main character in the movie, and she's going to go through a transformation. And one of the things I really like about this movie is that as we watch the movie progress, we can see that her partner committed an act of infidelity, and she walked in on it, and so she has this horrific memory of she's interpreting abandonment and rejection that is in her mind, and it's clouding her life. She's not able to go forward. Even her boss, at one point says, "You hate men," and that memory of that act of infidelity has clouded and filters through in her perception of the world, and it's shown very, very directly in this movie. And so it's interesting that a movie would use the context of quantum physics, of beginning to question what you believe is true. And ultimately, was what I experienced and what I perceived, was it the truth? Or was it just a misperception that I can let go of? And so this is a really core idea, because when you look at the world, you can be tempted to perceive the world through the lens of the ego, which is unfairness, abuse, mistreatment. You can tell if you look at the world through the ego's lens, you will seem to get angry and frustrated. You will, if you perceive through this faulty, distorted perception, this faulty lens, you will feel shame. You will feel pain and suffering. And you will feel unworthy if you are looking through the ego's faulty filter. It's what the Bible talks about in Corinthians. Looking through a glass darkly is what it says in the Bible. And that's what I'm talking about. And now we're starting to realize that all of the physics that most of us grew up with when we studied it in high school was Newtonian physics, and basically it was based on empiricism, and it was based on an external world. And back in the day of Isaac Newton, he was trying to find answers to how the world works, and he came up with a whole system. Only problem was that in that system, in that equation of what we call Newtonian physics, there was no mention of consciousness. And it really was no mention of the mind. And it's difficult to come up with something when you don't include the very mechanism, the very foundation of the perception. So, we have very famous laws in physics that came from Isaac Newton. For every action, there's a reaction, and we have studied things like gravity and different fields and vectors and different aspects that have been very helpful in things like building buildings and building bridges and making something out of matter. I was going to say making a mess, but I'm reminded Jesus says, well, it's much ado about nothing. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You got to have something if you want to be with me. Jesus is always like, don't forget, there is nothing to matter with matter. The matter's not the problem. Matter is not the heart of the matter. Spirit is the heart of everything. Light is reality. Light is unconditional love. Light is wisdom. So this movie gives us all a chance to kind of dive down the rabbit hole. As Fred Alan Wolf says, he invites us to jump into the rabbit hole with him and find out for ourselves. So we're on a journey with Jesus today to find out for ourselves our innocence, to find out that whenever we perceived was done to us, whatever we thought was like, you done me wrong, we were mistaken, because we really haven't been done wrong, ever. And that is a wonderful thing to experience, that nothing has ever gone wrong. That we simply misperceived the world because we believed in the ego. And the ego is the error. Some people say, well, is the ego Satan? Is the ego the devil? Well, it's an error that has already been corrected. So for us, the question is only, will I accept the correction, or will I deny the correction and try to continue to live in hell, the illusion of hell? Really, happiness is our birthright, and that's our workbook lesson today. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. But forgiveness, as Jesus teaches us, is seeing that what we perceived happened to us has in truth never occurred. It was a distortion of belief that has no reality whatsoever. In the quantum field, everything's connected, and what we're realizing is that the projected world is of separate images and separate time and separate space and linearity. All of that is the distortion. So we don't have to buy into that distortion anymore. But in order to see our true light and our true worth, we have to let it go. We truly have to let it go. So this movie is a very good eye-opener in terms of letting go of our faulty perceptions. This movie will still use metaphors from the world. For example, the brain. The brain is talked about a bit in this movie. Neurotransmitters are talked about. Peptides in the body, the chemistry of the body, so to speak, is talked about. From a Course in Miracles perspective, I want you all to remember that those are also projections. The brain, the gray matter of the brain, is a projection of the wrong mind. The neuropeptides that Joe Dispenza talks about, and Ramtha, and so on and so forth. These are scientists in the movie. Some of them are medical doctors, some of them are scientists, some of them are quantum physicists. But they are giving us reflections and symbols as if there's still something in matter that matters. It's still an attempt to understand using the material universe, and Jesus has told us quite clearly, you will never understand this world. In fact, his first lesson is, nothing I see means anything. So you know he's going in a different direction than peptides and neurotransmitters, but I think the quantum physicists they're just so cute. They remind me of like the hummingbirds at my house. They're just so cute. They're buzzing around and they're all excited and they get so enthusiastic. And I like Fred Allen Wolf with his hair. I like that white hair, where at the end of the movie he's going to be throwing his white hair around like Einstein did with his hair, and he's saying, don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Find out for yourself. Don't you love somebody that says, find out for yourself, instead of somebody that's trying to pontificate and tell you some point of view that you have to believe in? I think these quantum physicists are beautifully open and curious in their attempt to discover the truth. I adore these quantum physicists. And of course, this is just the beginning of their journey. So we need to remember that these are beautiful symbols of the beginning of a scientist's journey to know the Creator. And that's a beautiful thing. We should be celebrating that. I did see a documentary a few years ago where they invited people from all over the world, scientists and doctors and philosophers, to go on a trip to India and to meet the Dalai Lama and have a conference with the Dalai Lama. So all these amazing professionals took a trip to India, and of course they had to take long train rides. It was hot. They were all sweaty. By the time they made it to where the Dalai Lama lives, they were pretty much wrung out, like they're used to probably hotels and air conditioning and limousines or cars, but India is a whole new beast. When you've lived in the Western world and you take a trip to India, oh my God. So I saw there was a couple of there was a number of scientists from this movie that were all there. Fred Allen Wolf was there and some of the other ones. And they started getting into arguments. They were pushed way out of their comfort zone. And I could see Jesus was laughing like, okay, now we'll show you how deep the rabbit hole actually goes beyond the theories. See how you do in India with your quantum theories, Let's see how you do in India. And Dalai Lama met them and they had beautiful, open discussions. I love that kind of stuff. I think it reminds me of the ancient Greeks, Socrates and Plato and all the Socratic dialogues where people would come together and have a sense of openness and curiosity, say, what do you think? And then they would each listen to each other and try to go find the truth based on openness, based on a sense of let's join together to find something that shows we're connected. I feel the same spirit of that in this movie. And some of you know, it wasn't too long ago where I showed the sequel to this movie called Down the Rabbit Hole. And so we're going to watch the original now, which has a little more of a plot to it. I think Marlee Matlin, we get to really get a sense of the character she plays in this movie, and she's searching. She has insecurities, she has self-worth issues, she has betrayal, abandonment, rejection issues going on under the surface. She's a bit angry at the world and angry at men, and she's not happy. And so the movie will take us on a journey where she gets to come in contact on a subway system with Dr. Emoto's water. I guess there were photographs of molecules after they'd been blessed, and showing the power of consciousness and the power of the mind, even reflected in photographs of distilled water. And there's many other quantum experiments that are talked about in here by various teachers of quantum physics. Of course, this has a lot of the great quantum physics teachings on superposition. For people who first study that, they're like, what is this superposition? And it's like, there's a little boy who has a basketball, and they use that basketball to teach the concept of superposition, that the basketball is potentially in any number of positions, potentially. And then when the mind decides, based on its conclusion or based on its decision of its beliefs, then the basketball appears to be in one place. But we hear in this movie that atoms are not what we have believed they are. We used to think that atoms were things. They were very tiny things. They were the building blocks of matter. And this movie starts to show us that atoms are just potentials. And what we perceive as people and places and things and objects in a material world are just projections of our mind, and our consciousness has seemingly put them in places and locations based on a conclusion that we make in our mind. It's not based on reality at all. What does that teach us? That no two people see the same world, ultimately, because there's no two people. But let's roll it back a little bit there, because people say, wait, oh, David, you lost me there. Okay, there aren't different perspectives of this world. There really is only one mind, and there's only one world. And in fact, in A Course in Miracles, in the Manual for Teachers, Jesus is asked, how many teachers of God will it take to save the world? That's a really good question. And his answer is interesting. One. That would be like saying, how many angels fit on the head of a pin? And now, how many teachers of God will it take to heal the world, to save the world? One. And then Jesus says, but that one is not a body, or in a body. So there goes our personal Savior. You know, that Christianity always says, Jesus is the personal Savior. No, that one that saves the world is not a body or in a body. That one is spirit. And of course, that has to be the saving grace. Just our remembrance of our spiritual nature saves the world. We don't have to worry about who's the avatar, who's the Messiah, who's the Savior. You know, Jesus comes out as a workbook lesson. The salvation of the world depends on me. But he's not talking about your personality self. So don't go to the street corner and say, I am the Messiah. Unless you're totally identified with Spirit and it's true, then by all means, go to the street corner and say, I am the Messiah. You see, Jesus actually meant it when he said, I and the Father are one. Jesus actually meant it when he said, before Abraham was, I am. That was the Holy Spirit speaking. That was an actual fact. So he wasn't boasting. In fact, Spirit doesn't even know what boasting is. Boasting, what's a boast? You know, Spirit just is what it is. So this movie is a treat, because we're going to go on a healing journey with the backdrop of beautiful quantum physics, and then I'll come in from time to time as I am inspired. When I start to burst in happiness, I'll have to break into the movie. And it's a relatively long movie, so to make sure that you actually have dinner tonight, I will try to refrain myself from too many insertions into the movies. Otherwise it'll be like, what the hell, I missed lunch and dinner with David today, and now he's got me being a yogi. He's got me on some kind of yogi diet. But I hope you'll be as enthralled as I am with this movie, and I hope your heart will burst open when you watch this movie. So enjoy the movie, and I will jump in from time to time. Okay. So we can see our main character. She's kind of sitting on the couch, and she looks like she's in a bit of despair. She's having a very difficult day. We can see that she's a photographer. It's her vocation. But in her case that carries the camera, she's got her anxiety pills. And she's taking the pills to try to manage her day, to make it through the day. because of the anxiety. And we did see, have you ever seen yourself in the eyes of another? We saw a scene where there was two versions of our main character, one in which she was standing there single, and another which she was walking by arm in arm as part of being a couple. And Jesus is telling us that as long as you identify with these self-concepts, that you will have conflict. And that scene we saw was like a symbol of two different selves. One was the couple self, that was the identity of being a couple, and then there was one of a single self. And I'm talking about a single personal self. So Jesus is saying you have all these colliding, conflicting, false identities, and you think that some of these identities are better than others. In fact, she may be in such despair because she may be thinking, wow, I was so happy when I was with him, and now I'm not with him, and there's all this anxiety, like something has gone terribly wrong, like I should be with him. And that should is a hypothetical. Just like all the other potential scenarios in our life, I should have a career by now. I should have children by now. I should be a better friend to this person. I should be better in the role that I play, or the roles that I play. All these shoulds are all these hypothetical identities that are part of the ego. And actually, the good news is that we're none of them. We never have been any of them. That's where the guilt came in, believing we were something we were not. We're spirit, we're love, we're light. We were created by God. And then once we get into this belief in this hypothetical world, we're always thinking things should be better or different. You know, I know there's so many people that say, I'm single and I want a relationship and I won't be happy until I'm in a relationship. And then, as I go around the world and travel, I've met all these people. I meet people that are married or in a relationship and they go, I can't wait to be single again. I'm looking for my next out. I got to get out of this relationship to be happy. And it's like, it's bizarre when you start to realize that the belief is that my life has to look a certain for me to be fulfilled. And Jesus is saying, well, it's not true, but here, I've got a workbook that might help you out here. It starts off with nothing I see means anything. Then it rolls into, I do not understand anything I see, which is beautiful. That's like a Buddhist lesson too. I know nothing is basically what that lesson's saying. I do not understand anything I see. Then he starts off with, these thoughts do not mean anything. You see how practical? He's going right to our thoughts of what we think. And he starts off with, his first lesson about thoughts is, these thoughts do not mean anything. And then he starts to make it a little more personal when he gets to number 10, my thoughts do not mean anything. First he's like real casual. These thoughts do not mean anything. My thoughts do not mean anything. Okay. What's going on here? You know, what am I thinking? And Jesus says, yeah, your mind is filled with unreal thoughts, and that's the problem. That you have real thoughts in your mind, but you're not in touch with them. You're not in touch with, I am as God created me. That's a thought too. That's in there. But it's covered over with a lot of other hypothetical thoughts about the past that don't really mean anything at all. It's delusional. It's insane. It's sad. It's not a happy life. That's why our lesson is forgiveness is the key to happiness, because Jesus is saying, yeah, let it go, let it go. He's really singing to us through our movies. He's trying to encourage us to really let go of these thoughts, because these thoughts are not our reality. So we're just starting the movie off here, and we can see our main character. She's living her single life out now as a photographer. She's taking her anxiety pills. She's not really happy. We'll find out too that she has a very happy roommate, and that's not seeming to help. Even a happy roommate doesn't guarantee you happiness as long as you hold on to these thoughts of judgment. And also it's pointing to the idea that we're not perceiving reality, and there is a way that we can look at the world in a new way. Like Jesus is saying, it's not that you should not judge. He's saying you cannot judge. You're not capable of it. You're trying to do something that you weren't created with. God didn't create you to judge. God created you to be one, to be love. And when we think, I need to stop judging, it's still the belief that we are doing something real, and then we have to stop doing it. And it's not really that at all. We have to just come to be shown, come to discover that we've never been able to judge in the first place, because God didn't create us to judge. The ego is a belief, it's not a reality. It's just a belief. And you can let it go just as easily as you could believe in it. It's just as easy. In fact, Jesus would say it's a lot easier to let it go than to believe in it. But they're both options. They're both options. And that's what this whole movie is about, is starting to loosen us from thinking, I'm this person in this place at this time, with these skills and abilities, with this history, and with these future ambitions. He's like saying, you're not going to be happy if you continue to hold on to those thoughts. So here we go. We're on the journey with our main character here. She's not happy, and she needs help, and that's why we're watching the movie, because we need the same help that she needs. So that's why we're watching this. Okay, I want to use this little scene as a description of what I'm talking about. The little boy throws the ball at her, and she catches the ball and says, "That hurt." And he says, it never touched you. Okay, now let's break that down. That simple scene seems to be a ball being thrown at a woman, the woman saying, "That hurt," and the little boy said, "It never touched you." So, if this is faulty in some way, then we have to discover how it is faulty. First of all, nothing that happens in the world of form hurts. Jesus tells us in the Course that the mind tells the body what to feel. It's an interpretation. Hurt is an interpretation in the mind. It's a judgment. And the belief that there's certain actions, like a ball being thrown at your stomach and hitting you in the stomach, causes you to feel pain in the stomach. Her saying, "That hurt." And him saying, "It never touched you." This seems to contradict our human experience and our way of interpreting the world, big time. This seems to not be the truth. But what we're going to see as the scene goes on is that first of all, objects never touch. It's just a perception that the ball hit the woman. But objects never actually touch. They're just images, and if you look closely, which we'll see with a bouncing ball, that even a basketball bouncing on concrete, the ball is never actually touching the concrete. The electrons push away, and so we have interpreted, when we see this boy dribbling a ball, we would say, of course the ball is hitting the ground, that's why it's bouncing, it's rebounding off of the ground. It's a rubber ball and it's bouncing, it's bouncing off of the ground. That's an interpretation. Now, if you start to take what I'm talking about, which we'll learn about a little bit about superposition here, is you start to see that everything that you perceive in this world is an interpretation. You eat some food, you feel hungry, and then when you eat the food, you don't feel hungry anymore, and you interpret, that was a good meal, that was a satisfying meal, it took away my hunger. Jesus is saying, the hunger has nothing to do with the body or the food. Hunger is a perception. Everything, a basketball hurting when it hits the body, that's an interpretation. It's basically, Jesus is teaching us that everything that we perceive is an interpretation. And then he goes on in the workbook to show us that there's actually another way to experience the world that's different than this. Obviously, if Jesus went through the crucifixion and his body was nailed onto a cross and he didn't feel pain because he didn't believe in sacrifice and he didn't believe in the ego, so he could not have experienced pain because all he was aware of was the Holy Spirit. And I'll tell you, pain does not come from the Holy Spirit. So that shows you how high we can go. And he does say in the workbook, he says the body should not feel at all. If you practice well what I'm teaching you, the body will not feel at all. In fact, he is telling us that the body never feels. The mind tells the body what to feel. Every emotion originates in the mind. Every perception originates in the mind. And that is why Jesus is saying it's with your thoughts alone that we must work. He is not interested in behavior modification. Jesus is the least interested in behavior modification. You may think it's important. You may say, Jesus, help me lose 20 pounds. Or, Jesus, help me be more fit and muscular and not so fat. Let me have a less high percentage of polyunsaturated fats in my mind. Help me with my diet so I can have less polyunsaturated fats in my bloodstream. Jesus is like, please, stop. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the body. The body is just a perception. It's actually a projection of what you believe, and it comes from believing in the ego. And his goal in the Course is peace of mind. He said, this Course is not about learning knowledge. This Course is about peace. And he's equating peace with non-judgment. That's why if you took all the teachings from the Bible and the Sermon on the Mount, and you just put them down to 2 words, judge not. That's it. That's all you need. That's all that any of us need is those 2 words, judge not. Again, not because we shouldn't judge, because we can't. It's not possible. He wants to show us it's not possible to judge because you're the Christ and you weren't created by God to judge, so you're just seeing yourself in a strange way because you're thinking these strange judgmental thoughts. It's really very simple. But actually, going with Jesus and experiencing this pristine state of oneness and unification, that is the whole point of everything. There is no point to anything else. You don't think the angels are all hovering around you, oh, she lost 5 pounds this week. It's like, please, they've got better things to do to help you heal the perception of the world than be concerned whether you lost 5 pounds. It may be a big deal to you, but not to them. And behavior, Jesus says, what you do comes from what you think. So this movie, again, is good because it's starting to show us that we need a new way of perceiving the world and a new way of thinking. Because what we're thinking and perceiving isn't reality. Even though I know some of the people on there are saying, these are all different realities and we're reality making machines. Well, that's a bit it's a bit of an overstatement to think that human beings are reality creating machines when human beings are the outcome or the denial, part of the denial of the light. They don't have the ability to create. Jesus says the mind cannot miscreate in the body cannot miscreate in the mind. But basically, perception has nothing to do with creation. So, but this is the beginning steps. So we're not going to, split hairs over that. But I'm just saying, this movie is showing us, it's just the beginning of showing us that what we perceive, even a boy throwing a basketball and hitting a woman in the stomach, is an interpretation. Just like putting spikes in Jesus' arms and legs and blood coming out was an interpretation. It actually wasn't the Christ. The Christ is so full of light, so far beyond the body and the world that was nothing extreme or difficult. Crucifixion is in the mind. To believe in the ego is the crucifixion. That is the crucifixion. And the resurrection is to forgive. It's really simple when you look at it that way. So we're going to continue on with this scene now where she stepped on this court to learn a little quantum physics, and he's just about to teach her about superposition and about how all the basketballs are all in potential positions depending on how the mind selects and chooses and interprets, including a ball that's hitting her in the stomach that she says that hurts. He's saying that's just an interpretation as well. We have to let go of all the interpretations. Okay, this is great. This is fantastic. So you might say that with consciousness, all it is potentiality. Nothing is set, nothing is solid, and above all, there are no specific outcomes. What do I mean by that? Well, it's like right now in what seems to be this material universe, you can maybe tell yourself, okay, I'm watching What the Bleep movie over the internet with David. Out of all the potential things I could have done today, go out to a restaurant, take a walk in the park, go take a trip, do hundreds, thousands, potentially on and on and on, that it seems like we're watching this movie together. And that's an outcome. Because out of all the potentials, it seems to be the one that has been selected. Watching What the Bleep movie on Saturday with David and all my beloved brothers and sisters that are joined. That's just an outcome. That's a conclusion. So what Jesus is trying to do with us with the Course is he's saying, can you keep coming inside with me? Come inside with me. Come in your mind with me and let go of all outcomes that you're thinking about. Like, Join with me in purpose to see the world differently, but don't conclude anything. The problem is when we decide or conclude something about ourselves that is material or that is an appearance. As soon as we conclude whatever, like with Marlee Matlin character, I'm single. I used to be in a relationship, but now I'm single. It's a conclusion. It's a conclusion. It's an outcome that really isn't the reality. Another way I could say this is if you believe in, we'll say, parallel universes, and let's say you open your mind to believe that there's lots of parallel universes, and then you also believe that they're all occurring simultaneous. This is this thing about even the atoms and the electrons, the nucleus, they move in and out of existence. Existence is what we can perceive in this world. They're there, then they're gone. Where do they go? Fred Alan Wolf said, perhaps they go to another universe where the people in that universe are saying, where do they go when they disappear from that universe? What we're seeing is that everything that is perceived as an outcome is a trick of the ego. Everything. Even to say, I am a man or I am a woman. Well, Jesus says, okay, that's your opinion. It's not a reality. You're the Christ. But if you believe it to be so, it's what you believe. You bring it into existence, not in reality, but in terms of time and space, by concluding it. So that's why for many times people have difficulty with quantum physics, because they say, what is this talking about? This is like overthrowing everything that I believe in. And I say, yeah, that's right. If you study quantum physics, you have to let go of everything that you believe in. It's no different with the Course in Miracles, though. Maybe you don't want to study quantum physics, but you're practicing A Course in Miracles. Jesus is doing the same thing with this book. He's teaching us to let go of everything we think about ourselves and the universe. He even says it at the beginning of the workbook, that this workbook is about training your mind into a different perception about yourself and everyone. And all we can go is, what's that? He's like, right, do the lessons, practice with me. I'll take you there. I'll take you into an experience that's far beyond anything that you've experienced on earth. I'll take you into the kingdom of heaven, because you are the kingdom of heaven. You always have been the kingdom of heaven. But this book is doing the same thing that quantum physics is doing. It's dismantling false identity. It's dismantling misperceptions. And of course, in the end, we realize that all our perceptions are erroneous. Even forgiveness, Jesus tells us, is a false perception. It's a happy one, but it's still not reality. So I don't know about you, but I would rather embrace the happy misperception, or you could call that a true perception, is what he calls it, a happy dream. Why not embrace a happy dream? If that's the gateway to eternity, I'm glad to embrace a happy dream. I'll take a happy dream, even if it's just temporary. It's important. It's the gateway to eternity. So that's what the Course is doing. So in this movie, what we're seeing from these scientists are, matter is not what it seems to be. Nothing is solid, nothing is set, and no specific things of this world are stable. if we forgive, we can stabilize perception. We can come to like peace of mind, even-keeled, happy, peaceful perception. But no thing of this world is stable. And the ego is trying to convince us that there are stable things. The ego might say, "Oh, David, you've got your love cup again. Every time you come over to Quantico and Anna fixes you a cup of coffee, she comes out, she brings your love cup. It still looks the same. It's the same context. Sometimes it's not smaller or bigger. Sometimes it's not squishy. It's still solid. And then, and there's coffee with some cream or coffee, and it's just so stable. I just come on Saturdays, Anna makes me a cup of coffee, and the ego goes, that's good. You know, it's a stable life. No, this cup is not stable. It's very, very temporary. ISO could knock it off and crack it in an instant if he wanted to. He might come in and prove it to you all too, if I ask him. This cup is not stable. And yet, when the mind is asleep, it looks for things to be stable. It wants stable people in its world. It wants a stable home. It wants a stable income. It wants a stable way of life. And Jesus is just saying, well, if you want stable, you're not going to find it in distorted perception. You know, that's what I read in the lesson. You know, in this world which seems to make no sense at all, you're not going to find stability. But in your mind, you will. Because in your mind is where the spirit is. In your mind is where forgiveness is. That's why we go inward. So this movie is starting to dismantle the things that we believe we understand. Like if we would walk into a room and we would see a basketball in the room, it's not like 10 of us would debate if the basketball is there or not, or where the basketball is. We say, look it's right there. Everybody can see it. But even all those witnesses saying that the basketball is in one position does not make it so. That's just making up an illusion and then all concluding the same thing about something in form, and that's not going to bring stability. Just as an example, wherever you seem to live, you know, there seems to be a country around your body, some country, and there seems to be a government or a group of politicians that seem to be running that country. This is just a perception, but you can perceive that you are living in a country and the country has politicians that are running the country. That's just a story. That's just an interpretation. And when we go deep inside, we start to question our perceptions. We start to question our interpretations. I think that's the value of this movie, is it's just showing us that we shouldn't be so fixed on our opinions of people or places or cultures, because it's just coming from our own mind. We're just believing in it, and therefore we're perceiving it. But forgiveness will undo that. So here we go. We're going deeper down the rabbit hole with our quantum friends. Okay. Those are two beautiful scenes back to back. If you recall the first scene we just saw, that she's walking through a square in a town, and it's cloudy, it begins to rain, people start to put up their umbrellas, and then there's this scene that happens where a dog breaks loose from his owner, and he goes running, and with his leash, and then other people try to help her by all zooming in to try to help catch the dog. And she's watching the whole scene, and she's so in the moment, she's so into the mystery of it all, that she takes off her bag, her photography equipment bag, she goes down to the ground, she gets her camera out, and she's going to photograph this picture of all these people with his dog running and his leash and his red leash on the dog, and she's like in the moment, like, wow, look at this, like an interesting scene. Let me take a photo of this. Like, wow, she's in this mysterious moment. And then, if everything's a thought, she must be thinking in some sense about her job, because her boss calls. It's one of those old flip phones. In the middle of this mysterious moment, this mysterious scene where she's just out in nature in this square in the rain, and she's, wow, just going to take a picture of it, then the boss calls, where are you? You know, what's happened? You're supposed to be here. You're late. What is it, aliens? You know, is it a hot date? Is it, you know, and now she's thinking of time. She's thinking of her vocation of being a photographer, of being a late photographer. The boss is upset. The boss is calling her. You see, all these concepts, as soon as her mind shifts to start to thinking about all these things, identities that she is, when she's late and the boss is upset and all these kind of things, then she feels stressed. She went from feeling wondrous, from feeling, wow, what a miracle, like she's just observing the whole scene in a miraculous way, to thinking about her identity in time and space, and she becomes contracted, she becomes stressed, she becomes anxious. Okay, we shift. Next scene. She's trying to get to work. She comes down to the train platform, and she's thinking about, she's late and she's got to get to work. You know, she's thinking a lot of self-concept thoughts about her job, and she reaches to get her pills, her anxiety pills, because she's suffering. She's feeling very anxious. But she spills the pills, and they spill all over the concrete, and she gets down on her knees to try to get as many of the pills up, and she misses her train. Now, from the self-concept perspective, it's more stress, like, oh, I'm already late, now I've missed the train, and my pills spilled all over. But this is how Jesus works. In both cases, Jesus was showing her the mystical, magical moment of non-judgment when she was there watching the dog break loose and all the people try to help. And now, even after she scoops up her pills and she's, you know, she has to just let go of that whole train of thought, then she's curious and she happens to discover Emoto's photo exhibit of all the times that he photographed molecules of water, and how the intent in the mind, the chi of love and thank you, looks so symmetrical and beautiful. And then, you know, the one, what was it, something I want to kill you, or something, I hate you, I want to kill you. You know, you see this yellow, black, it looks like some kind of a disease, actually. I hate you, I want to kill you. That's how it looks when it's photographed, that thought. It's beautiful, it's a representation. So you see, immediately, in both scenarios, Jesus was working with her to try to bring her through to the miracle, bring her through to this glorious state of mind that is a glimpse of forgiveness. And in both cases, she started thinking about her job, about time, about being late. And you see the stress, and that's pretty much shown on that that photograph of that last photograph, I hate you, I want to kill you, that's showing a stressful thought in graphic representation. And the chi of love and thank you showed these beautiful, looked like kind of like diamonds or snowflakes, something beautiful. So that's how it works with, even when you perceive yourself as a person, if you give your mind over to miracles, you will start to have experiences like her experience there on the square, and her experience when she saw the Dr. Emoto's photographs of the distilled water. Those are the kind of witnesses and symbols that start to be reflections of your miracle mind. That means you're starting to experience miracles. You're starting to see the glory and the happiness. You're starting to feel soft inside instead of harsh. You're starting to feel light instead of heavy. You're starting to feel free instead of enslaved. That's an experiential way that the Holy Spirit has to work to help the mind loosen from its fixed perception of littleness, of specialness, of pride, this egoic thought entrapment. It's basically the thoughts are not really entrapped. You're not entrapped by them, but you believe in them, so you seem to be trapped in them because you believe in those thoughts. In fact, the ego belief is generating those thoughts. Sometimes I think of it as kind of like an aquarium, where you've got this aquarium and you've got some fish in it and some different rocks and different plants, and then there's a pump, and the bubbles, the pump is aerating the aquarium for the fish. It's bringing some air into it. And yet, if you would go down all the way beneath the aquarium, you would find a cord that would go to a socket, an electric socket, and if you pulled the cord, if you pulled the plug on that pump, the bubbles would cease in the aquarium. And that's what Jesus is telling us. He's like saying, come with me, follow the cord. We're going to unplug this ego. It seems to be generating lots of bubbles, and you are really stressed out with these bubbles. You've got bubbles in consciousness that are stressful, but the good news is none of them are real, and if you'll come with me beyond the aquarium, I will show you where to unplug the ego. And believe me, when a pump is unplugged, it stops. And when you unplug the ego, when you unplug the ego from your mind, it stops. It gets quiet. It gets very still. I can tell you from experience, that's 35 years of working with this thing. I can tell you with 35 years of working with this, and I'm not just talking about reading it, reading is just letting your eyes move, but I mean like giving yourself over to what this is teaching. It takes you into stillness. It gives you a peaceful, quiet, tranquil mind. And that is not a small gift. That is like a huge gift. It's always there for us, but we have to train our minds to open the gift, to unwrap it, so to speak. Unplug the ego. So I like this movie because it's showing us examples with our main character that there is another way, and she just needs to stop and let go and unplug. That's what even, remember in the Matrix when Neo's in his room and he's hacking away and doing all the things that he does with his computer, and Troy shows up with his girlfriend, knocks on the door, and Troy says to him, it looks like you need to unplug. Those are the exact words of Troy. And Neo goes for it. Then he meets Morpheus, and eventually he goes to the Oracle, and eventually he discovers he's the one. That's our journey too. We need somebody to come and knock on our door and tell us to unplug. We need to actually take the advice and unplug, and then we wake up to the one that we really are. So all these movies are really showing the same story. This is great. This movie is acting out and showing us some very, very deep principles. One of them, the scene we just saw, she goes in, she sees that there's this assignment to go to a church and shoot this this scene that her boss wants her to go and photographs at a wedding, and she's like, I hate weddings, I hate churches. It's the past. Whenever we hate anything of this world, it's just the past. There's some unpleasant memory that we have in our mind that we're still holding on to, and that's where the fear is generated, that's where the guilt is generated, that's where the hatred is generated. Then, if we jump to one scene before that one we just saw, it was J.Z. Knight, it was Ramtha. How old is Ramtha? How many thousand years? It's supposed to be I think it was a 6,000-year-old man. She channels. It's been a long time. Esther, help me out here. Use your sign language. You're a Ramtha fan. So we've got, this is 6,000 years old. 35,000. Okay, good. I'm corrected. I'm not a Ramtha expert, but I knew who to call on. So we have a 35,000-year-old man being channeled through J.Z. Knight. And what's the content of that message? She's talking about sexuality. Now we're getting quantum physics applied to sexuality. Now it gets exciting. Now I see, now you're perking up there. You're saying, okay, tell me how quantum physics relates to sexuality. And she says, all it takes is one sexual thought, one sexual fantasy for a man to have an erection. She says it's nothing outside of him that is producing this. Well, here we go. Now, Spirit is using a 35,000-year-old man through J.Z. Knight to dismantle our perceptions of sexuality. Because why? Because we've been raised with false cause and effect ideas about sexuality. You make me horny. Oh, really? It's J.Z. Knight is channeling Ramtha and is telling us that it's the thought in the mind that where the horniness has come from. Remember what I said earlier? It's not, the body doesn't feel. The mind tells the body what to feel. Oh, that will really turn your perceptions of sexuality around when you start to realize that people, images outside don't arouse you. You arouse yourself in your consciousness based on holding on to these sexual fantasy thoughts. And guess who is generating the sexual fantasy thoughts? The ego. That's right. It does the same thing with food. When you start thinking, have any of you ever had, you get off work, you're coming home, and you start to think about the food that you're going to fix? Your favorite food, something you really want to tune into, and then you maybe start to even salivate. You start to get a little saliva going just when you're in the car driving home thinking about eating the food. You see? It's all mental. That's what Jesus is teaching us in the Course. There is no such thing as an external physical world. Everything is mental, and it's all consciousness, if we use the word that the scientists here are using. For them, that's a big step, That's definitely not Newtonian to use the word consciousness. You don't see Isaac Newton saying, okay, what's going on with your consciousness now? No, that is not what Sir Isaac Newton is talking about. He's talking about for every action there's a reaction. He's talking about empiricism. He's talking about a world of things and stuff, as if it's real things and real stuff, real matter. And quantum physics is saying, no, you can't take consciousness out of it, because that's where the unification is. That's where all is one. That's where Jesus would say that's where forgiveness is. Forgiveness is like a happy dream or unified consciousness, if we use those terms from the Course. So this is important two scenes, because our main character, she's reacting to her past memories of getting married. And why is getting married such a painful memory for her is because there was an expectation that when she got married, she was going to be married for good. Isn't that a wedding vow? Till death do we part? Something like that? Not that it's very optimistic or happy, but still, till death do we part. If you have an expectation that when you get married for life, and then you hope for a notebook scene where you both die at the same time. That sounds like a happy reinterpretation of Romeo and Juliet. They were hoping for something like that, but they didn't quite get it. But that still is an assumption that you're married until you die. And it didn't go that way. She seemed to walk in. We saw a little flash of the scene where she walks in, she sees an act of infidelity, and now she's developed a hatred of men and of churches. Why? She got married to what? A man in a church, and this other memory now has turned it dark. It's very dark. She hates men and churches because of the way that this outcome came out. So what does that, we've just talked about sexuality, we just talked about the past. What does that have to do with marriage? Well, marriage is union, and what Jesus is saying is union is of your mind. Union is of your divine mind, your spirit. That's the union. That's what the love is. It's not two bodies who say, I do, because our main character went through that. What's the big deal, she said. I do, I did, they did. You know, she's boiling down. She's not too happy about the wedding because of the outcome that seemed to come after the wedding, which was the infidelity, and she catches him with another woman, and now she's got a lot of anxiety because she's got this memory of this failed marriage. You know, all of this are just thoughts. These are all just thoughts in the mind. And you can let them go in any instant that you choose. You don't have to continue to believe these thoughts or believe this world. You can't really believe that perception can dictate your state of mind, when actually your state of mind is in the present moment, is free of the past, is free of these false concepts. And that's why Jesus is saying, come join me in the present moment, because that's where you're free and happy, not in an outcome of the world. This world seems to offer all kinds of... Ego has good outcomes, bad outcomes. To the boss, he's giving her an assignment, and he's thinking, this is great, just go do your job as a photographer and go and photograph this at this wedding. And she's thinking, I don't want to do it because I don't like weddings, and I don't like men, and I don't like churches. The whole thing is a past association for her. So whether it's a sexual thought, whether it's a thought about men, churches, women, marriage, divorce, infidelity, it's all the same. Murder, rape, war, pestilence, disease, it's all the same. It's just distorted perception based on an egoic belief, believing the ego is real. That's why the whole point of the Course is to forgive yourself, to release the ego from your mind, and remember yourself as God created you. And you can see this movie is just showing us, we're starting to fill in the blanks, we're making some connection between what seemed to be our life in the world and our deep experience that we can have in our mind. Okay, that was an interesting sequence. Is quantum physics dismantling traditional theologies? Yeah, I think so. Even J.Z. Knight, channeling a 35,000-year-old man, is saying, the theologies of this world are not exactly accurate. God is not like that. And that's good. But also, I should mention that quantum physics is used by Jesus as dismantling Newtonian physics. It's dismantling science. It's dismantling theologies of all kinds of different religions. I'll call them dualistic belief system. Spirit dismantles dualistic belief systems, whether they be philosophical, whether they be theological, or whether they be scientific. It doesn't matter. The human race is sitting on a distortion of ego belief. And even when J.Z. Knight was saying, could a mortal sin against the God of that greatness? Well, it's sin, as Jesus talks about it. It's an error to be corrected. It's a little tweak in the mind. It's a tiny mad idea that was believed to be serious. Now we're asked to laugh at it. That sounds like a good direction to me. Laugh at the error in your mind and recognize the truth. Be happy, be joyful, be innocent. That's a good alternative to taking serious the ego belief system and all of the projection of the cosmos which comes. Even what J.Z. and I was talking about, the splendor of nature and everything, that's a nice symbol. Taoism uses a lot of beautiful symbols from nature, about the river reaching the ocean and all kinds of things, the tree and the tree trunk, and I find beautiful symbols in nature, but remember, they're just symbols to point your mind inward to the truth of who you really are. It's not to be found in the symbols. The symbols just point to an experience that's within you. So, in one sense, maybe you've seen yourself as kind of a rebel, or maybe, an antagonist or whatever. You don't have to hang on to that either. It's not about rebelling against faulty theologies, it's just about seeing their impossibility. That's what Jesus did when he came, the scribes, the Pharisees, the whole Jewish tradition was about discovering God and finding a way to be one with God through following God. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing, except that Jesus overturned and showed the nothingness of a lot of the rituals of sacrifice, the belief that God was a punishing God, the belief that somehow you could disappoint God. You had to, keep the Sabbath and do all these rituals and be a certain way to please God. It was kind of like theological ego, people-pleasing of God. But what if God is just pure happiness and God only is a light drawing you to let go of all false beliefs? Wow, that's great. I'll spend eternity with that loving God, but there's no God of punishment. There is no God of sacrifice. These ideas don't even mean anything in eternity. They don't even exist. So why would we continue to believe in something that doesn't even exist? We don't need to fool ourselves into a false identity. So now we've reached a point where she's gone back to the church, and she saw herself as a little girl. She dipped her hand in the holy water. I guess it's in the Catholic Church, when you go in there, you get to dip your hand in the holy water. And of course, not in The Devil's Advocate, the devil put his hand in the holy water. It was like Al Pacino. I love these movies. They really are comedies. But she's rehashing, when she goes into a church, she's reliving all of her memories of her theology growing up and of her Catholicism and of her religion. And there's a lot of memories that are not pleasant, that are not happy. So that's a mental thing, though. Jesus is saying it's not the church is not good or bad, that physical church. It's just the church is in your mind, it's in your consciousness. Your family is in your consciousness. Your job is in your consciousness. Your environment is in your consciousness. Everything is in consciousness because everything is mind. This is a world of ideas, and we're simply here to let the Spirit purify our heart and our mind so we can remember the truth. It's really, really simple. We just have to give up the lie, give up the falsity, and embrace the truth in order to feel that. Now the next scene we're just dipping into is, after the church scene here, she's going to the wedding reception. She's going to get a little drunk. That happens at wedding receptions sometimes. And she's going to go through some flirtations with this guy. There she perceives herself as a single woman. She gets a little drunk, there's a guy there, and now Spirit, through J.Z. Knight and this 35,000-year-old man, are going to teach us a little bit more about how sexuality is in our mind. Sexuality is not in form. Mental fantasies, which is what sexuality is all about, is all in the mind. So even if we are dealing with issues of, like Muna's talked about, of being molested or rape or thing like that, that's a mental construct, as well as what people would consider normal sexual relationships. Those are all in the mind. Everything is mental. That's why Jesus says in the Course, all sickness is sickness of the mind. There is no such thing as physical sickness. Well, you can't just leave it at the topic of sickness. All sexuality is of the mind. All disorders, when people talk about drug addictions, that's a mental disorder. When people talk about hunger and starvation, that's a mental disorder. When people talk about COVID-19, it's a mental disorder. And we were just on Ken's show, and our friend Aman is dealing with what seems to be a massive COVID outbreak in India. And I remember saying to him, well, your one responsibility is your perspective. You still have a choice of your perspective on this world. We always have a choice of perspective on this world. We always have that option to line up with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, regardless of what it is. But once we start to get into what J.Z. Knight's going to get into in the next segment, is basically saying that when you feel sexually aroused and the hormones are kicking in and the peptides are kicking in the body and everything, and the chemistry of sexual arousal, that's a mental state. That's not a physical state. You can't continue to believe that you're sexually aroused by a certain appearance of sexuality of the body, and you can't keep telling yourself that some bodies are more attractive than others when your mind is making this up. The ego it's its whole system of preferences. And don't tell me about food. Everybody's telling me organic food is better than inorganic food, and chemicals and pesticides. Who made the pesticides up? Who made the organic foods? Who made the chemicals up? The ego. We're still down to the Course in Miracles and forgiving the ego. And don't think that you can mess around with the things of form. You may be guided, that's all right. You can be guided to eat a certain way, that's beautiful. You may be guided to exercise, okay, that's fine, if you believe in it. It's been a lot of years before I believed in exercise, and people laugh sometimes when years ago I was at some gathering, maybe in Europe or something, and somebody asked me, do I exercise? And I said, I don't believe in it. They said, what? What the heck are you talking about? You don't believe in exercise? I said, I don't believe in it. It's all mental. It's all mental. I'm happy and I'm shining here with all of you, but believe me, I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger. I do not pump a lot of iron. I don't even care if I eat iron or eat enough iron. I don't believe in vitamins either. But you have to start to just realize that it's all belief. What you believe, you make true for you. You bring it into existence in terms of what seems to be physicality by belief. And you can let it go. You can forgive it. That's the purpose of A Course in Miracles, is to take you into a state of mind where you unwind your mind from all ego beliefs and you free your mind. You free it back to its natural condition as being your divine mind, one with Spirit. So here we go. I know some of you have been looking forward to this, but this is going to be the dismantling of all your sexual beliefs as you watch it acted out with great commentary from a 35,000-year-old man who may have some perspective on this whole theme. Okay, since you're Course in Miracles students, I have to do a little translating here because you're like, wait a minute, this sounds fascinating, but I don't remember much about hormones and peptides and receptors and parts of the brain, hypothalamus, and sending it to different parts of the body. Jesus never really talks about this. Now this is our medical model, but these are the cute doctors and medical models. They're just as cute as the quantum physics. They're physicists. They're just like hummingbirds. From their perception, they're giving you a detail what's going on in the chemistry of the body when you're thinking thoughts of the ego. You know, when Ramtha, our 35,000-year-old man, says all emotions are chemistry in the body, it's not quite so simple, because Jesus takes it all the way back to our split mind, and he says you have two emotions, love and fear. So love is in the right mind and fear is in the wrong mind. And everything that Ramtha is describing, and all these doctors, Candace Pert and Joe Dispenza is describing it in terms of the neural networks and the wiring of the brain. Don't be upset with any of this if it doesn't fit with your teachings of Jesus, because it's just the reflections in the body and in the environment of what you're thinking and believing. You know, remember, the brain is just a projection. The brain is not causative. You know, if we talk about all that's happening within the physiology of the brain and the body, don't get too wrapped up with all that, because that's just reflections. But I will say, this is reinforcing my point. You don't blame the body or the brain. You can't blame your neurons, because if you start to think anything of the brain or the body is causative, then you're going to be blaming your body. Those damn neurotransmitters. And oh good, those damn peptides got me horny, and then I ended up having sex with him or her, and then I ended up with like 25 years of heartache because of those damn peptides, those damn red peptides in the movie. You know, you see, you're just going to blame the body even more so if you stop there. And Jesus is just telling you, wait a minute, all that is just a reflection of what's going on in your consciousness. And you can forgive your consciousness. You can forgive everything you thought, did, everything you believed in. You can forgive all of history. You can forgive Hitler, Mussolini, and those damn red peptides that got you into sexual trouble. You can forgive it all if you start to realize that the mind is where the causation is, and everything in form is a reflection of those beliefs and those thoughts. And then if you really get excited about this forgiveness thing, you might want to check out my levels of mind diagrams and website, and then you can really find out more about your consciousness. And then if you really want to get excited in practice, you can use the instrument for peace, or you can use Spiri. It's all digitized for you, so you don't even have to write on a piece of paper. You can just go through Spiri, your spiritual assistant. What do we have that now in? We're getting it in Dutch. We have the Spanish, English. Dutch is coming. Anyone over there in Holland? The Dutch Spiri is on its way. So this is just a practical way for you to start to take your upsets and bring them back to your mind and choose again. But please don't blame the peptides after I show you the rest of this movie. I don't want there to be a peptide revolt. Now we have a 12-step group on, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I get some damn red peptides that got me into all kinds of trouble. We don't need another 12-step group for this. I'm just saying these are all reflections in the body and in the chemistry of the body that are reflecting what's going on in the mind and consciousness. And that's why Jesus doesn't talk about a lot of these things, because he's talking about the mind. He's very focused on having us find the release where the release is. And it's not in the body. And it's not in form. It's in the mind. Okay, here we go. I'm still waiting for Rampa to deliver the dismantling of sexuality on planet Earth. Here we go. Yeah, I don't want you getting angry at these green peptides either. I was just going to go after sexuality, but any of you who have had trouble with weight issues or obesity, do not blame these green peptides. Please. It's just going to be another level. When Candace Pert is talking about the cell as the smallest unit of consciousness, actually consciousness doesn't have units, and it's not small or large. And believe me, I've read all the literature too about every cell in your body has a consciousness. Please, this is more fragmentation. You don't have to have millions of little consciousnesses in your body. Plus, the 7 billion people say, well, everybody's got their own consciousness. No. There's only one consciousness, and that is the domain of the ego. That's the sleeping mind that forgot it's the Christ. But consciousness is not in cells. I've read all this literature, people tell me about cellular memories. David, your cells have memories. It's like, how many cells are in a body? There's lots. And they've each got their own memory. Oh, please, this fragmentation thing is too much. It's cute, but it's not real. So just please, when we look at these symbols of the peptides, and then we've commandeered a whole barbecue, and they show an obese man stuffing his face, don't blame these little green peptides, because the peptides are just representing a belief in lack, a belief in I need something to fill up the emptiness in my mind, which comes from believing I'm separated from God. And so everything that we perceive in the body and the chemistry is just a reflection of the addiction of the mind for judgment. There's really not separate kinds of addictions either. There's not food addictions and cocaine addictions and alcohol addictions, sexual addictions, multiplicity. Woo, the ego is just, now it's multiplied addictions into many different shapes and forms. The only addiction is judgment, because God didn't create the mind to judge. And once the mind believes it can judge, then it makes up an entire identity that's tied into that judgment. And that's what all the fragmentation is about. So I enjoy watching this movie, but you have to see it as a comedy of just the things in the world are just, they're very graphic here. And now we're seeing it's going after eating addictions, it will go after sexuality in a little bit. It goes after all forms of misidentity, of identifying yourself with the physicality in the body. This is giving a whole new definition to people-pleasing. I think it was last week or the week before I said, if you have a body identification, that's people-pleasing. If you believe in peptides, that's people-pleasing. You're peptide-pleasing. Stop peptide-pleasing with me. You know, even if you watch this movie, I don't want to have to hear about, and now I'm going to get messages, those damn red peptides and those green peptides, I've been fighting them my whole life. No, don't blame the peptides. The peptides are just symbolic representations in the body of what's going on in consciousness. And that's why we need miracles. That's why Jesus wants you to be a miracle worker. He wants you to have a unified mind and let miracles be performed through you to unify awareness. Because it is unified. It's not that it needs to be unified, it already is. It's just recognizing what it is. Okay, this is turning into a really fun movie for me. I'm getting really animated. I'm enjoying this so much. This is my comedy show. Hey, thank you, Joe. I could hardly go. But you see what he did now. He went from the peptides and the chemistry of the body and all the other neurotransmitters and everything, and then he said, we generate environments and situations. Now we're talking. You see how that's perception. When you start talking, it's not the peptides are not generating the situations, the environments. Don't blame the peptides for that either. The peptides themselves are projections. The brain is a projection, the body is a projection, and all of this is a projection of the wrong mind, Jesus would say, of the ego. So what is it saying? Yes, that's right, the ego projects the world you see. The ego projects the environment. It projects the body, it projects the environment that surrounds the body, it projects every situation that you perceive. That's right, it's the ego that's underneath this. It's not the peptides. So let's not just stop it, bring it back to the chemistry in the body and say that generates the environment. But I love that he brought that up, because now we're starting to see the projection aspect of it. So it's no longer just what's going on inside my body. If there's environments and situations that I don't like, maybe you say, I don't like my work environment, or maybe I don't like my home environment, or maybe I don't like where the culture I live in, you know. Some of you maybe are looking at your culture in the United States or Europe, South America, Australia, and you're saying, I don't like the politics, or I don't like the racism, I don't like the sexism involved in it. I don't like the socio-economic divide. Why are there poor people and rich people? Why are there people, the haves and the have-nots? Well, that's all a projection of the ego. That's why you have to forgive the ego. Don't start trying to blame people. Don't blame the politicians or the peptides. You know, don't blame the police. Don't blame the scientist. Don't blame the priest. Don't blame anything throughout history, because all of history is a projection of the ego too. Come inside your mind and be willing to let go of the ego. And that's how you reach the kingdom of heaven. You can't keep putting it out onto people, places, situations, or in this case peptides or anything like that. There will be no release if you still try to place the scene of the crime in time and space. The seeming crime is the belief in separation from God, and it's the belief in the mind. And it's only undone in the mind. That's where the correction is. But you can't project the error to form. Don't project it to the physiology, to the chemistry of the body, to the brain. Don't project it to the situations that the body finds itself in, or the environments. All of these things are projections. And it's good that this movie is just showing us what's going on with the body. But remember, Fred Alan Wolf said that even the constructs of atoms and molecules and protons, nucleus, electrons, all of that, remember he said it's a fantasy that mad scientists have come up with. That's it, Fred, you've got it. Even quantum physics, when you start to talk about those tiny particles and that big energy in small spaces and small time that he was talking about, that's all fantasy too. All of time and space is fantasy. And then the miracle takes you back to the present moment, takes you out of that whole distorted fantasy. Okay, we'll keep going. I'm enjoying this today. This is our beginning of dismantling sexual attraction. These two young guys have just shown up at the party, and the guy with the drinks is talking with them, and they admit their motive for coming to the party. Two things: foxes who put out, women who have sex. That's their purpose. That's the purpose for it. And now it's going to show that their perception, remember we just heard Joe Dispenza say the peptides and this chemistry generates the environment and the, what did he say, the situations. So it's not just their little red peptides that are in there, but it's the intention. Their purpose for the party is, in their own words, foxes who put out. And now that's going to determine their perception of what they perceive. When they look at a woman, they're looking through the filter of their purpose or intention for being at the party. Foxes who put out. So this is pretty graphic, but this is actually showing how perception works. If you get past the peptide part, you just bring it back like Jesus says to your mind, he says, what is it for? That is the most important thing. That belongs at the beginning. So he's trying to train us to come to a party like this, as well as every other situation that we ever experience, to come as a miracle worker, to come to see the situation as a whole, to come to look beyond the body and see the purpose of forgiveness by seeing the light that is literally beyond the body. That's where it's ultimately leading. But this example is showing an example of how when the mind has an egoic purpose, which it wants something specific, it wants to get something. That's the second part. Foxes who put out. That's the put out. They want to get something from the foxes. It's not just observe the foxes. Of course, you have to judge the foxes even to know what a fox is. What is the standard of beauty? What is the standard of attraction and sexuality? That's what the foxes part. And then who put out, that means to get something, get sex from the women. So then when you have this motive, that determines the situations and it determines the perception of the situations. And that you do have control over. You do have the control over what purpose your mind serves. Make no mistake about that. You can give it over to Jesus and the Holy Spirit to use for miraculous purposes, or you can give it to the ego to use for its purposes, which is always to get something. Some kind of fantasy, pleasure, pain, distortion is always what the ego wants to get. And Jesus said, you send forth witnesses. He calls them sentinels in the Course. You send forth the sentinels based on the purpose that your mind is holding. Now this is going to be an example in this movie of the sentinels going out with the purpose of foxes who put out. I like these, this is the best way to teach the Course, is to have good graphic examples of what's going on in consciousness, and then you see the perception being determined by, I look inside first, and then I look outside and see a world that witnesses to what I looked for in the first place, for the purpose that I was serving. Okay. Now with all these little drippers, the movie is trying to make the association between the chemistry and the peptides and the actions. And the party, the dancing, the seeming sexual attraction, the looks, the gazes, the judgments. It's trying to connect the chemistry that's going on inside your brain in this movie with the actions, with the behavioral actions and the environment of a Polish wedding. Now, Jesus would say, okay, that's right, but remember what I'm saying is that your thoughts determine what happens with these peptides. When Jesus is on the cross and he's going through his final scenes in the world, he doesn't have a lot of active peptides. He's in the peace of God. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's right, forgive all their behaviors, forgive their brains, their peptides, forgive their erroneous ego thoughts. They know not what they do. And this movie is trying to make the connection between the emotions and what's going on with inside the body and the brain. And the hypothalamus is kind of a big character here. Of course, the peptides are even dancing, you're addicted to love, they're singing, they're trying to make the connection between the behaviors and what's going on in your chemistry in the body. What I want to do is remind you that the chemistry that goes on in the body is all based on a decision in your mind. That it's the purpose you serve is where the addiction is. The only addiction is addiction to judgment or ego thinking. There's only one addiction. All this puts it out as if it's multiple and varied, but to release your mind from the ego and to become a miracle worker is your escape from the problems of time and space. You might even say that your only addiction is to the past. And then when you free your mind of the past and just let the Spirit give you your intuitive guidance moment by moment, you're free. You're home free from the addictions to the past. The key, that's why Eckhart Tolle always talks about the present moment, is to be present. That's where the escape is to stay present. So it's really a time thing in the mind, and the peptides and all the chemistry and all the behaviors and actions, they're just effects. They're unreal effects coming from an unreal cause. And the unreal cause is the ego. And that's why when you come to live a devoted life and you come to devote your mind to mind training and to being in the moment, to being in the miracle, that is what frees you from things. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, sometimes we go by the name around the world of living miracles, but this would be like living quantum physics. Making a movie where you attempt to take some of the discoveries of quantum physics and show how that can impact you in a practical way. And ultimately, when they were talking about getting back to choices and making better choices, that's really what A Course in Miracles is doing. That's what Jesus' plan of awakening is he's telling you, you really need to make better choices. And what he means is you need to choose to align with the Spirit and make right-minded choices. Meaning, he's not talking about choosing between things in the world, but he's saying choosing between the ego and the Spirit moment by moment, and learn to choose the miracle, the Spirit, more consistently. So that first you become, we'll call it a miracle worker, and then you more consistently are able to choose the purpose of the Holy Spirit, to be right-minded, And then ultimately you have to make a choice that will allow you to escape from time and space, which is the atonement, which is the choice that Jesus represents. It's a total escape. In this movie they kept calling it the ultimate observer. We might take an ultimate observer, they mentioned, and transpose it and call it dreamer of the dream. Ultimate observer. That Jesus says that this is a world of dreams, and that you made it, and that you can be the dreamer. You are the dreamer of the world of dreams. No other cause does it have or ever will. So Jesus is saying it's possible to reach that ultimate observer, the dreamer position, and once you reach it, then you reach a still mind, a mind that is not trying to judge between the images anymore. It's just total acceptance of everything exactly as it is. So it's just a shift in perception. It's going from egoic perception to, we might call it true perception or the happy dream. And I do like the spirit of this that made this movie. It's very open-minded. It's very curious. We got to hear from professionals across the board, from people into medicine, quantum physics, biology. Joe Dispenza was sharing a lot of his teachings and learnings from Rutgers, and so it's using a broad range of terminology, a little different than sometimes just watching a regular movie with just a plot, having it interspersed with these really high teachings, and then of course with commentary and reinforcement that it all comes back to the mind. It's all based on a decision in the mind, which is always inspiring, because it's always very empowering, and it reminds me of our workbook lesson for today, that forgiveness is the key to happiness. So you have your hand on the key, and you can turn the key at any moment and practice turning the key to bring peace and release to your mind. So I really look forward to our interactions that we have at the close of the day, and hearing everything that you went through with it, whether it was during the setup or the movie or during the breakout sessions. If you had a chance to really let some emotions up and speak them, that can be enormously healing, and a momentum kind of opening the doors of your mind to a much deeper healing when you release those emotions, or first speak them up, and then you're more willing to release them to the Holy Spirit. So, very good. Well, I think, Pete, I see we have a few hands up, and we'll start the process of the one-to-one joinings here now.
Yep, we've just put the instructions in the chat on how to raise your digital hand. And we can start with Esther. You can unmute there.
Thank you. This was exciting. I have a lot of connections with this movie, David.
You sure do. I thought you would really find this one relevant.
Dr. Daniel Monti, actually, when he was a medical student, he came to an organization that I was a part of, and we taught him how to eat raw food and how to dance, social dancing. And then when I got ill, it was about whether or not he could be my psychiatrist, since he had already been one. And he felt there was a conflict, so he didn't take me on. I was a student of Dr. Joe Dispenza when he was at the Ramtha School. And then I continued studying with him when he went off on his own. Dr. Mikael Ledwith, he was at the Rumpel School as a teacher, and I challenged his ideas. It was really fun to watch everything. But what came up for me during the breakout room and also after, during the break, were these doubt thoughts come. And I could be specific, but they're just doubt thoughts. And I was going to tell you what Alan said that Ramtha would have said to me if it was him teaching me about the doubt thoughts. And he would say, bring it on. And that you cannot pass, like the Gandalf on the bridge in the movie The Hobbit. And then he would chug a drink of wine, and that would be the teaching.
Okay.
And then for Alan was saying for Ramakrishna, he would have said, what did I have here? That he would embrace the Groundhog Day experience and surrender it to the Holy Mother. And like you were teaching me, you said all the paths lead to the same curriculum, to know thyself. And no matter the teacher. And so when the doubt thought, like the experience more so now is more happiness and peace, and it's just a natural, even flow of that experience. But these doubt thoughts come, like I'll say, it manifested the idea about weight. Like in the movie, this woman had the challenge of looking at her body in that mirror. And then the other doubt thought was, that my stepmother will stop supporting me because I'm not getting the vaccine, because she thinks I should. And she keeps sending me more articles about what she feels is correct information versus what I've been sharing with her. And the way that it's about working with upsets for me, how to work with thoughts and feelings, and it's very basic. What I've works really well, and I just wanted maybe to say something if you feel, what works really well is to ask the question from myself, what is this thought and feeling arising against? And then I'll look. And what I find is that it's rising against is not involved in the thoughts and feelings whatsoever. And then the idea also to include this, what Joe Dispenza teaches and Ramtha teaches about how you're chemically addicted to the same old emotions, and that, like he said, do not pass to those emotions and thoughts and feelings, so that you're making that choice, like you're saying, Jesus is saying to make the choice between the right mind and the wrong mind. You're saying do not pass, and you're choosing the right mind in that moment, in that instant. And so you're not chemically hitting the same neuro pathways in the brain, and eventually they wear away. But I know you're saying that that's all part of the body stuff, but this is the teachings that I've been exposed to, and your take on everything was just beautiful. I mean, it was just, and if you could express just a little bit more, like, about that idea that you don't want to hit the same old emotions. And that's what, actually, knowing that that's what's going on when the uncomfortable feelings come up, knowing that that's going on, that it's just hitting the same old emotions, kind of puts it in a perspective for me that I can choose in that moment the right mind. And then what happens sometimes is that there's a hammer that comes out for the personal self. Oh, but you're hitting the same emotions again. And that's a form of doubt, I would say. And to work with that, just seeing that that's just a thought, and that's arising. And again, what's it rising against? Is that involved? And I'll say every time I look, it's not. But the eyes might go to the tops of the trees, and I'm experiencing all these chemical imbalances in my system. But eventually it calms down, and the laughter is just present. And it's like night and day, David. It's like you feel the schizophrenia just disappearing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Esther. It's like it was summarized in the movie that most people live their lives as if today were yesterday. In other words, that what people experience as daily life is kind of like Groundhog Day, or re-experiencing memories, like rehashed and repeated over and over. And I like how the movie basically said, at one point it basically said that psychologically, either it's kind of like a binary thing, like you either fully experience the ride of these intense emotions, and they are very intense, and they were being described by Joe as a storm, and Jay-Z was sharing, when they were showing pictures of the gray mass of the brain and all these storms going off, kind of like a lightning storm or a big thunderstorm. And Jesus is saying that in the Course. He's saying the mind is so powerful and it never sleeps. It's always active. And so what you end up doing is you either have to somehow face all these storms, which are quite intense, or there's a shutdown. It's a shutdown, and it's almost like I'm not going to feel, where the mind becomes very disengaged from feeling. It can go into all types of intellectualizations, it can go into all kinds of distractions, but it's more like it's trying not to feel, like the storms are too intense and I have to get away from it. It reminds me of the very famous Beatles song Paul McCartney wrote, Yesterday. If you just look at the beginning of that song, yesterday, love was, or all my troubles seem so far away. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday. I need a place to hide away. The feelings, we'll call them the feelings of yesterday, are so intense because that's the ego. The ego is the past. And then when he says, now I need a place to hide away, that's the denial mechanism, where a lot of human beings seem to go into a state of, they just shut their emotions off, almost like it's a pipeline. It's like, close the lid, shut it off. And if you're not in touch with your emotions, it's very difficult to heal, because you can't heal what you're not even aware of. If you've completely shut the emotions off like a defense mechanism or a protectionism, then you're not in touch with your feelings. And Jesus is saying, no, your feelings are your barometer, and they help you get in touch with what's going on in your mind. And he's saying we need to be in touch with it. We need to allow it. We need to allow our emotions. We need to allow the storms to come. And like you used even the word welcome. Bring it on, welcome. We have to have that willingness to go through that and heal. So I think with this movie, first of all, a lot of the teachings that you were brought up with, because the mind is so pushed out of awareness, and Jesus says that's the whole reason that time and space were made, was to keep you mindless. It's all right if you take on a body identity, and it's all right even in modern times if you want to start to look at the brain, the processes of the brain, and the chemicals of the body. But what he's saying is none of that is causative. That is all still in the realm of effects. So Jesus' main teaching, and this is why it's so deep, we might say Ramtha was 35,000 years old and Jesus is eternal. So now we've got the voice of eternity that kind of trumps the 35,000. First it sounds like massive. Is it 6,000? No, it's 35,000. But it's still like the pea, the princess and the pea. That's a little pea compared to eternity. But the voice of eternity is telling us that the mind is causative and that everything we perceive and experience is a result of a decision in the mind. And he even goes so far to explain the dynamics of the mind by saying a decision is a conclusion based on everything that you believe. He tells us in the Course. Well, what if most of my beliefs are unconscious? And he's like, yeah, that's the problem. Your decisions are based on very dark unconscious beliefs, and that's why it's so heavy. That's why people feel suicidal at times. That's why people feel depressed or bored with the world. Recently, Frances was telling me that a friend of ours went back to visit her grandchildren, and all the grandchildren spend like 8 to 12 hours a day on the computers with video games. Just their minds immersed in taking on avatars and playing out all what we would have thought were life decisions, but they're doing it through gaming now, video gaming. And yet, it helps to have a metaphysics that start to say it's all going on in your consciousness, and you do have to be aware of it. You can't run from it, you can't hide from it, you can't get away from it. So at some point, I remember the first time I started to really sincerely look at my consciousness, all I could think was, oh no, I'm opening a can of worms bigger than I even want to know. Like, oh my God. And the first feeling was a bit overwhelming, almost like, how can you even plan to do this in a lifetime? How can you have a life if you've got to face all that's in your consciousness? But after a while, with the prayer of the heart, then the tools come and the peoples come and the contacts come and everything you need. It's part of the package. It's part of the willingness to wake up. So I think mainly for yourself, with some of the things that you deal with on a daily basis, that is a good practice to kind of bring it back to the mind and bring it back to the I, the I am, or to that which is, and you start to realize more and more that the emotions and the things you've been concerned about don't really relate to the true self, the capital self at all. And that's very much what Jesus says, bring the darkness to the light. So that's what you're doing when you do that. When you ask the question, who is it that suffers here, or however you word it, you're bringing that emotion or that experience to the light, and that is healing. That's exactly how healing occurs. So I think we just cheer each other on. We support each other in allowing those emotions to come up, and it's particularly tempting in relationships to search for a false cause, or to try to project something, or to try to throw the cause out onto the world or onto people. But we're onto it now. We've got such great mind training and such great support from Jesus and the Holy Spirit that we're onto the whole game. So in one sense, it's the gig is up for the ego.
Like you said at that mystic thing at La Casa de Milagros, connect, don't project.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's our latest buzzword phrase. Connect, don't project. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Beautiful.
Thanks, Esther. We can go to, how about Isabel? You can unmute there.
I find myself going back and forth right now with, I guess, listening to that movie on my role as a creator or creating, and yet I like the feeling of the script is written. I like that part, but I notice I'm feeling a little disoriented or confused, and so my question is what is that? I've listened to Joe Dispenza quite a bit and Ramtha as far as being they were able to manifest like a loaf of bread and things like that above their head. They're doing things like that, like thought creates something. But yet then I find myself feeling a little conflicted, or my foot, one foot's on the gas, one's on the brake of, do I do anything to try to affect anything? And there's a subtlety there, a balance that I'm feeling a little just disconnected from right now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. That's actually a very important point and a very important distinction. I would say that there's a huge swath of spiritual awakening teachings and literature that I'll call the New Age. And that's a huge area, but one of the basic tenets of the New Age is that you can create your own reality. And this is absolutely nothing to do with what Jesus is teaching in A Course in Miracles. There is no meeting point. Basically, what the Course is teaching is that God is the creator of reality, and God creates in spirit. And for the mind that has fallen asleep and forgot that nirvana, that kingdom of heaven, that state of oneness, which is reality, then it's a process of forgiveness, of learning to look upon the world with the Holy Spirit and overlook the error of the ego and see the light of the atonement in the mind, which is this blazing light of truth, of reality. So when you watch a movie like this, or you watch The Secret, or there's many movies about manifesting, the underlying assumption of all manifesting movies is the New Age belief that you can create your own reality. It's much more popular. I'd have to say on a scale of 1 to 100, manifesting scores like a 99 percentile, and forgiveness, as Jesus teaches it, is like the 1%. So they always talk about the 1% in society of wealth. The 1%, I'll say, of the ones that are really, really ready for spiritual awakening, I'm talking in the truest sense, are those that are not into you create your own reality. Because it is diametrically opposite of what Jesus is teaching. In the movie, you can hear it. A lot of, like Esther was saying, a lot of these people went to Ramtha, and they're related, and Benedictino, and I could go through, you could name hundreds and thousands of teachers that are basically teaching part of you create your own reality. It's very prosperous. If someone was going to wanted to maintain a body identity and have an earth career, that would be the thing to get into if you wanted prosperity. That's the way that Jesus is teaching in the Course. It's much more aligned with the mystics and saints who have given all up for their prayer and devotion to God, to union with Spirit. So, actually, I'm very glad that you brought that up. And the other thing about it is sometimes they talk about like reaching a glass ceiling or a plateau. Anyone who tries to create their own reality will reach a point in the manifesting where they will have the old Peggy Lee song, "Is That All There Is?" I mean, I've actually been traveling around and done the Course for 35 years, and I do remember once I think I was in Michigan, and I was doing a teaching session, and this woman came up to me during the break, and she said, "People call me, my nickname is the Manifesting Lady." I said, "Oh, great." And she said, "I can manifest anything. Soulmates, cars, boats, gold watches, you name it. I've done it many times over." That's why my nickname is the Manifesting Lady. So I talked with her. I said, "Oh, that's great." I gave her a big hug. I said, "I want you to start off the second half of my presentation and just share maybe 20 minutes of all your ability to use the power of your mind to manifest things, and then I'll take it from there." So I like to incorporate these things, I like to get somebody who's really good at creating their own reality, so to speak, or manifesting. I love to bring them in because at a Course meeting, that was very impressive, They were all, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh, They don't hear a lot of that stuff, so I'm kind of get them through that phase as fast as we can. Just like, let's get some good witnessing with that. And then I brought it down to, I said, but what if you can do that, and then what? Is your peace completely consistent? No. Is your happiness consistent? No. Okay, well that's good. That tells us something. Then that means there must be some form of unfulfillment that's still in the mind. If you're the manifesting lady and you're not consistently happy and peaceful, then that's a good witness too. Tell everybody you're not happy. And then I went into the depth of, okay, let's look at this more closely. Because in order to manifest something, you still are manipulating the past and trying to bring a better form or a better outcome of the past than you had before. And what we learn from the Course is there is no better outcome of the past. The past is gone. Jesus says, "The past is over, it can touch me not." He says the one truly helpful thing you can believe about the past is that it's gone. Wow. There's the way, the truth, and the life speaking. And he's saying, don't dilly down and tinker around with the past, because it's like trying to rearrange the deck chairs of the Titanic. That ship it's not only going down, it's sunk. You don't want to waste your time on something that's already sinking or going to be sunk. You want to reach to something that will last forever. So I explained the dynamics of when you try to manifest something, you're just trying to pray or to bring into experience, like into appearances, something that you believe is better. But Jesus tells us, you don't know what your own best interests are. You really don't know how clueless you really are about spiritual awakening. If you're just trying to manifest and trying to make that your life, he says, you're asking for far too little. you could have the kingdom of heaven in your awareness if you really wanted it, if you desired it, and you're settling not for too much, but for far, far too little. So these metaphysics of Jesus are so, so deep that they go way beyond the New Age. Way beyond. And then the Holy Spirit can use aspects of the New Age, like I would consider there's a lot of things, like astrology. Can the Holy Spirit use astrology? Yes. Can the Holy Spirit use numerology? Yes. Can the Holy Spirit use past life regressions? Yes. The Holy Spirit can use all of that to kind of show the patterns in the mind, but the patterns are all the past. And you don't need to learn different variations of something that's already over and gone. You actually need to realize that it's gone. That's what authentic spiritual awakening really is about. So I'm very glad that you raised it, because it helps for so many people start to realize, oh, okay, that's where I was wondering, when you hear enough of create your own reality, there's a part that's like, well, I somehow don't think that's putting the finger on the nail. That's not really hitting the nail. It's somehow it's dancing around the nail, but it's not hitting the nail on the head. And your question is really a good one. It's really an important one. Thank you.
Okay, well, we could go to Juliana next. You can unmute.
Hello, David.
Hi, Juliana.
So good to see you, to talk to you. So I have two questions today, and I understand they are very related to the movie, what you spoke. Okay, the first one is, once we know cause and effect are together, how can you interpret the fact that in Gary Renard's book, one of Artan, I don't know who was, but one of them told Gary that there were some specific supplements that were good. Feels completely odd in the sense that there's no causation in the world in general way, and even this way, they chose specific types of supplements. So, I don't know, feels weird. And the second question is, for me, it's difficult to teach the forgiveness process to a person that doesn't believe God, doesn't believe anything above. Feels like a very challenge for me to explain the forgiveness process without saying that God didn't create this world. So, because it's okay, if you are going to talk about only, choosing to let go, I understand this is probably but it's one of the biggest part, but maybe the main part is acknowledging God as the only reality, right? So I feel like if I'm going to talk to a person that has no spiritual side, what type of language you usually use to be clear on this? Yeah, okay, that's the two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, with the first questions, people have asked me that all over the world, in China and everywhere else. The people read all the literature, so when they read about art and Persa and they start to see that there's certain supplements being recommended, they're like, why are ascended masters recommending supplements? They had the same look on their face when they asked me the question, and it's like, it's almost like it's trying to sell some supplements. They would come to me, they said, is Gary invested in any companies that make these supplements? And so the ascended masters is like, oh, here it is, for 1995, this is definitely one of the top supplements, coming from Ascended Masters, you can see where it could get to be a bit silly. Well, yeah, I mean, supplements would be magic, and the Spirit can use magic when the mind is too fearful of the miracle. And so there can be Jesus says there can be times when the fear is too high, and a mixture of magic and miracle can be helpful. Kind of like Jesus telling the blind man, go over and wash and put some mud onto his eyes, and then he could see. It was a little magic right there with the mud on the eye thing. But actually that has to be under guidance. So the idea of putting in a book the top 8 supplements, oh my gosh. Poor Ascended Masters, they've stooped to a new low to pawn different types of magic. So anyway, I tell people don't put your faith. And the other thing you mentioned was about simultaneity, cause and effect being together. Even when people talk about the script, which our last question that was brought up, the idea of the script itself is a metaphor, because obviously there is no script. It's a linear metaphor. And simultaneity is much more accurate than the idea of a script. But the reason it says the script is written is because it's emphasizing the last word, written, past. It's the past. But what we talked about today, that everything is literally simultaneous, is much higher than the script is written. That is really zooming in there. And that relates a bit to your second question, which is if you become stronger and stronger into the awareness that cause and effect are together, when you do that, your perception of even teaching, like you were saying, how do you teach another? How can you teach forgiveness? And do you have to bring in God, not creating the world? And it's almost like, how do you teach forgiveness conceptually if you start to become aware that cause and effect are together? And you don't. The more you get into that experience that cause and effect together, the mind gets very still, and then from that attitude and that presence of stillness, you are teaching the whole universe forgiveness without words. And that's why, how many teachers of God does it take to save the world? One that knows cause and effect are together. That's all it takes. It doesn't take many, it just takes one. And also, that's the thing about teaching. You start to realize it's in the mind. So in terms of what you're experiencing right now, which is you're getting more clear that cause and effect are together, and you still will say have clients or people that are coming to you for help, and you're wanting to be helpful. It's best to pray. I remember when I had so many different people coming to me and different clients, I would just be in a state of prayer, and I would never try to pre-plan the words. Like sometimes I could speak in quantum physics terms, or another time in more philosophical terms, or another time I would speak more of the teachings without referencing God. Kind of like, maybe like Byron Katie or Eckhart Tolle can share a lot of teachings but without specifically mentioning God. If you were teaching it from a quantum perspective, you would talk more about maybe the quantum field or the connectedness of everything, but really it's your attitude that's doing the teaching. If you're happy, if you're peaceful, if you're joyful, that state of mind automatically radiates healing. And then you focus more on that, and then if there are words to come, or just a smile, or a hug, or a pat on the shoulder, something that would be helpful, it's always helpful to remember that Jesus says that Jesus can perform miracles indiscriminately. In fact, he says, I'm the only one who can. Well, okay, that's what the way, the truth, and the life does. Performs miracles indiscriminately. And yet, he says if there's an action component to the miracle, which speaking words is an action component, and even hugging somebody or anything like that, that's all action component. He says, please let me handle the action component, because only I can tell what would be helpful in all circumstances, in all situations. There's no human being that could possibly know the perfect thing to say and do in every conceivable situation, except for the one who has transcended time and space, who can perform miracles indiscriminately. So, as you maintain that contact with Jesus, then you relax, and it's almost like you, in one sense, you give yourself permission to kind of go into like autopilot, where Jesus has the control panel. You know, so the Juliana puppet is given over, like, okay, you know, you take it from here. I'm willing. I want to send healing. I want to send a blessing. I'm happy. And if there's words to say, then you're going to have to control the action component. And it takes the pressure off. So that's how I feel even when I go to speak to a big crowd of like 500 people at a conference. As I'm walking onto the stage, you know, it's Jesus, take the wheel. You know, it's like that's you have to be in that state of mind, because what am I going to say to 500 people that's helpful? But there is one who actually sometimes has a lot of really good stuff to say, and that one can come through in always the most beautiful way. I've had sessions with people sometimes where I'll just be in prayer, and then the words that pop out of my mouth, you know, it's like, I'll be just like, and then they look at me and they go, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. And then they're so excited because it totally relates to something that they were thinking. So you really have to be pretty surrendered, because, you know, it comes through, and then you just trust that it's giving a blessing. So I hope that helps. Good. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, we can go to Muna next. You can unmute there.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Hi Mona.
Hi, nice to see you again. So this movie was really a very gentle confirmation. I don't know if I'm clear. Am I clear?
Yes, we hear you clearly.
It was a very gentle confirmation of like my state of mind after we spoke on Thursday. I reflected more on defenselessness, and of course, when you reflect on it objectively, if I can use that word, like who was feeling vulnerable and who was feeling so afraid, and I really got in touch with how I'm still identifying with the ego. I mean, I did say that it's a belief that I'm a body and I'm experiencing this, but I didn't feel it then. But afterwards, I started to see, well, actually, of course, we relate to ourselves as the body and as the character as us, and that's the whole entire level of confusion. That's the whole entire problem. So that was opened the door for me to go back even more and see that I'm not the character. I mean, you have invited me time after time to just give up the character and the world, give up the world and all of that. And but there was still something in the way, and I had a conversation with AC I've always had this thought in my mind, it's so much easier to be a victim than to be the victimizer. Like if I was the perpetrator, I really don't want to know. And I was always like aware that I have that thought and that I might have it for a reason, that there might be hidden guilt. Because I do feel fear, I do feel shame, but guilt is just totally invisible. So, but in that conversation, and she was, inviting Holy Spirit and all of that, and the guilt just gushed out, that I disobeyed God's laws, and I need to be punished for everything I've done. It was biblical. It's like, you don't believe that you know these things, but you do, because you're not the character, really. You're just, you just sit on top of this unconscious mind, and it has to come out somehow. And that released a lot to me. And Jesus has been working with me to just go into stillness, and I feel a lot more relaxed, a lot more able to see that I'm not the character, a lot more able to even go into oneness every now and again when the opportunity arises. So the movie today was like really perfect, like such a gentle affirmation. Yes, you're on the right track. And it feels like a milestone for me, this realization. So thank you for your conversation on Thursday. Thank you for the film today, and for all your conversation with all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Muna. Yeah, I'm glad it's coming clear to you, and you're feeling it. That's the most important thing, is to really feel it, take it in and really feel it. And if we ever had an opportunity to kind of see, with time being simultaneous and all the different characters and roles and parts all being simultaneous, that from that perspective, that the victim role or the victimizer role, they both involve one thing that make them the same, which is attack. I mean, attack is under both the victim role and the victimizer role. And so what Jesus is saying is, once you're willing to see that attacking and being attacked are the same, you will be willing to let the roles go. And that's essential, because both of the roles are body roles. One, the world would say, the ego would say, they're very different. Being the victimizer and the victim, the ego would say, well, there's a major difference there. And it assigns different meaning to both roles to make them different. But Jesus is saying, well, there's two forms of attack, and if you really want to heal it, then just bring it back to your mind and see that they're both attack thoughts. Neither of them are loving. And in that sense, you'll be willing to let them go, because that's lesson. I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thought. That's really getting down to the release. Is that lesson number 23? So I can see where Spirit and Jesus are working with you experientially to, little by little, to just take you toward that healing release point, where you can feel the release, like really fully feel it and experience it. And I'm glad that Thursday and today have been helpful. I can feel your love and gratitude, so that's amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We can go to Don next. You can unmute there.
Okay, hello.
Hi, Don.
Hi. Hello, David. There you are on my screen. I am unmuted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So, David, I guess there's several things. Well, as far as the movie goes and your teaching along with it, I was kind of all over the place, ecstatic or hopeful and enjoying, and then in fear. And it really got me the idea that I don't know the terms, but at the manifest level of the cells, and you keep having the same thoughts, and they just kind of keep magnifying and multiplying, almost like it's just you're kind of like on a slide, a trajectory. And that's what I feel like I'm at. I was hoping I was kind of just falling apart and would get put back together. Just a little background. I've been studying the course since about the early 80s, really intensely. I got this original book, and you can see it's all falling apart. And I had put it aside. It was Mr. Mom. But the latest thing is, I've been suffering from depression and a little bit of mood disorder thrown in there. And I tried different kind of treatments through psychiatry. And the latest was to decide about taking some major antidepressant. And I just actually said no to that yesterday to the psychiatrist. But the thing is, I'm not sleeping well. I'm really not sleeping well. And even trying to take a nap is kind of horrendous too, because I won't sleep well, wake up unhappy and that kind of thing. And so I was saying, well, I just want to throw all my faith into spirit and not the magic. And on the break, I actually did the thing you have on your site where you can ask an oracle, ask for an oracle. And it came into, I don't know what chapter it was, but the teaching about what you had just talked about a bit ago, about if you're just so fearful that you can't throw in a little magic there. And I can, if it weren't just knocking me off my feet in terms of sleep, I think I could just keep going with faith and spirit. But I'm just concerned that there's this trajectory occurring that I can't. And I have I had a grandfather. Killed himself when I was 18. He was an older guy. He was my icon, really, for Christianity. He was such a kind and gentle man. So it was quite disturbing. I was in college. I just went the other direction at that point. So I'm looking for some guidance about that. And I heard what you just said about, gurus, teachers recommending supplements in a book, like a desk copy of the psychiatric meds, right? Mm-hmm. And you said, it needs guidance, immediate guidance, based on tuning in by somebody who can. I've had teachings from spirit, student. I'm teaching you to vindicate. When I got that one, I thought, what does vindicate mean? So I had to look that up. And then I got a nice one a few years ago. Don, I know everything about you and I love you. That was sweet. And I've had some other kinds of inspirations that if I agree to them, everything changes. Yesterday, so I've been in Kriya Yoga for about 10 years, did some seminary in Kriya Yoga and that kind of stuff as well. And I've been a volunteer, Siva service, Siva. Mm-hmm. But I don't meditate very well. I've sat a lot. My butt hurts from sitting, but my mind's not so expanded. Pretty big ego, egoic type thing. Yesterday, so in January, I started back with the course again, and I've been pretty intent on it. Pretty good student, regular. So yesterday I'm going, I just got to go one way or the other. I see all the parallels with yoga. I mean, it's just embedded in different words in the course. And, but I've always felt, even in studying Kriya Yoga, I've felt this battle going on, kind of like about loyalties, loyalty to the lineage of Kriya Yoga, loyalty to Jesus. And when I picked these books up, I finally got into these books. I was just doing online, the course stuff. My heart just went, this is where my heart lays. So yesterday I'm going, okay, I just got it. And I'm sitting meditating, sort of. And all of a sudden, an image of you, like, just kind of like fluttering, came into my mind, into my forebrain, just like a picture of, whoa, hi, David. I didn't say that, but you said, welcome to A Course in Miracles. It's kind of, oh, that's cool. I still slept like shit last night, though. I still am troubled like crazy. I go, woo, 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 like this. So, two things. Some guidance about, I'm with the lineage of Yogananda, Yogananda through, Babaji, through Yogananda, and Roy Eugene Davis, who passed not too long ago, and his devotee, Yogacharya Ellen Grace O'Brien in San Jose here. And I have actually the spiritual name of Gopala. And so my question is, do I need to just stop being not tantalized, but I wake up early in the morning. There's always a 6:30 online meditation for Kriya Yoga with Dakshinamurti is the latest. They brought that icon in about a couple of years ago, right after Roy died, actually. And I've had increasingly over the years this pressure in my forehead, third eye, pinching, and then all around the crown. And that's now it's there almost all the time. It's distracting. And of course, I have stories about it, and they're not happy stories. So I guess my question is, do I just say, okay, and I talked to Yogacharya, I'm just going to put that aside for now, as far as, the retreats and the Sunday services, and I was part of the youth program, so being a teacher there, and even the morning meditations, and just go, okay, Course in Miracles, and that's one area of guidance I'd like to talk about, and the other is just the medication. And she's talking about lithium and Abilify and that kind of crap, big stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been there before, not on those, but I've been there before. I even tried, maybe you've heard of transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, the new thing. I did that for about 3 weeks, and I just thought, again, it was the same kind of thing. This is just magic, or at least it's a body level, body, mind. And what do I have when those things are working, quote unquote, properly, but I still have no sense of guidance? I'm still not tuning in. I'm still not I'm still not resting. I'm not at peace. So I want guidance on these things. And I also, wants guidance on the meds and guidance about, do I just need to go with one in practice? And because it feels hypocritical, actually, even though they're the same, they're going to the same place. I see the absolute parallels, just in different language. Except in Kriya Yoga, there's much more emphasis on skills and becoming skillful in the world. And of course, that would be I think an outcome in Course in Miracles. You'd have a path, and I think I have a lot of skills from the past, and that I could give, and I want to serve. And that's the one thing that I'm not really doing. I don't feel I'm serving a function at the manifest level. I do a lot of internal work on forgiveness and such. But have I gotten it down to top?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful, Don. Thank you. That really was very well articulated of everything that you're experiencing in a good, very thorough context. Well, I think that's great that you have just the heart of devotion and service and seva, and that you're aware that that's something that you're not engaged in right now. In terms of the cranial things and the different experiences, even with the not being able to sleep, there's a line in a Course in Miracles where Jesus said, sickness is function unfulfilled. So, wow, that's a short little zinger, but it really is helpful. And I know myself, service and seva, I often tell people when they're going through intensities or challenges or difficulty, I say come back to the heart of service. And even the prayer at the beginning of the Course, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. That's a beautiful, like an alignment prayer, really activating that feeling of service, which feels so good and so helpful. And yeah, I'm sitting in a room full of people that are just in full service, as we have cameras and microphones and lights and computers and mixers and everything, and it's like a full service. Every day is a full service day for us, like that movie Way of the Peaceful Warrior, where Socrates, Nick Nolte character, is teaching Dan that his life is to be of full service, and Dan's like, at a gas station? Come on, man. Like, you're the lowest of the low. And he's like, that's the point of life, to be of service, as a gas station attendant, pumping gas, washing the windshield, checking the oil, and full service. It's really a good movie with lots of very helpful symbols. So, first thing is, if you really are just opening with the Course, my journey with the Course was to go so fully into it that my prayer was, okay, Jesus, use me in ways, teach me how to make this more accessible for everyone, more relatable, less obscure. And so I use a lot of music. I use different types of, obviously the movies and the commentaries and using them as parables. And just like you went to the oracle and you clicked on the oracle and it took you right to the place where it said if it's too much fear, a mixture of magic and miracle, we just recently redesigned our Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment site, mwge.org, and we have a movie oracle now. That's right. If you want to have some fun, you may not only go and get the passage like you did, it was a beautiful one, you zoomed right into the one that was helpful, but you can go into the movie oracle and it will suggest a movie for you. And so it shows you how Jesus is so loving. He just wants to reach us in ways that we can relate to. And also we do have a new online community called Tribe. It's Living Miracles Tribe, and basically it's a way to connect in a very deep way. That's very safe. That's very welcoming. Very loving, very supportive, and yeah, you could be in touch with Linda. Linda can contact you and actually send you some information about that, and that's a good way to connect. Just connecting with others in inspired ideas and collaborations and projects can be very much raising your energy. Really starting to bring that spark and fan that flame of that spark in a way where you can feel more like you're getting into the seva, you're getting into the connection in a very simple kind of way. So to me, those are all the things I would recommend right away as just things to just pray on and be open on. And then in terms of the medication, I think it's good that you have, I mean, you basically just were turning it down, and I think the reason you were able to do that too is because there's something inside you that says there's another way, and I want to find it. And I think that's actually good. It's good that that's the first inclination, that there's another way. Please make this obvious to me. Please show me. Because all of us just want to connect in. We want to be inspired. We know that as we're inspired, that our focus and our attention goes away from the body, and we start to forget things that have been pains or difficulties with the body. My friend Judy Scutch, who's the publisher of the course, Judy Scutch Whitson, I'm doing a podcast with her that'll be recorded next Wednesday, and I'm not sure the actual publishing date, but we'll put that out. We'll let everybody know. But I had an email exchange with her recently, and she was saying that I mean, her body's in age-wise is up in the upper 80s now, but she was saying that much of her time she's racked with pain, and when she's listening to the course on audio, when she's doing Zoom sessions, when she's connecting, she's sharing, she has no awareness whatsoever with pain. It's just, that's a perfect example of being in so much alignment that the pain completely disappears from awareness. And I think that's a great witness for us in that sense. And I've had, people that have had difficulty sleeping, and there was some, like you were saying, it can be certain memories or certain stories that the mind is still retaining in memory, much like the Amanda character in the movie we just watched. She had some memories of that infidelity incident that it rocked her world. And even though she was going on with her professional life, and she took that woman in as a roommate and so forth, she was taking a lot of anxiety pills. She was hitting the magic pretty hard because she got rocked from the interpretation of that infidelity. And then it was until the very end of the movie where we saw her, in the bathtub with her head leaning back and making love hearts all over her body, that she seemed to really let go and surrender into the love that was there for her all along. So yeah, that's just what's coming to mind. I wouldn't make any decisions necessarily first on the medication. I would just pursue what feels really good in your heart, what feels like really nurturing and supportive, and go there first, which is always good to go in that direction. And then if it starts to soften in some ways, or it seems to lessen the difficulties, the sleeping difficulties, or the depression, or the pressure feeling in the crown chakra and the cranial areas, if that all starts to lessen and loosen, then that's just a very clear indication, okay, you're on the beacon, like you're coming back. And that relates more with me showing up in to you and saying, welcome to A Course in Miracles. So, as they say in Spanish, bienvenidos. Un curso de milagros. So thank you. Sure. One more thing.
I don't want to take a lot of time. I definitely think it's like I need to give. I mean, I had about a week ago, I'm driving along and I'm praying, I think, about it. And I heard this phrase come, "Get thee to a nunnery." It's kind of funny. So and I have thought of joining one of your communities, or actually, I don't know if you just join, but, trying to be someplace where 24/7, I'm retired, I'm an old fart, and I'm retired. And as I said, I was volunteering I was reading children's books for the youth program, and, that are about mindfulness and those kinds of things, giving, gratitude. But it's just not enough. I mean, I need to be giving. I need a forum, and it could be a gas station. It's not like I need something grandiose, but I do need something that's appropriate from Jesus's point of view.
Yeah.
So I'll do some praying on that, and I'd ask that maybe you join me in prayer about that. Not now, but I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that sounds really good, Don. And then even if you pray on that and you feel to take another step and you feel to contact somebody at one of our centers, we have one up in Utah, we have one here in Mexico, and one over on the island of Mallorca. But oftentimes people make an initial query or request of interest, and then can have a joining, maybe over Zoom or WhatsApp or Skype, and sometimes that is a very helpful thing, because when people start to open up into how that seva or that service feels, and they give themselves over to it, and sometimes they have an immediate feeling of peace come over them, like, oh yeah, this feels so good. And that is part of the benefits of co-living, is there's lots of opportunities to join together in many ways. I mean, some people cook, or they clean, or they share music, or they share dance, or they bring their skills, like you said, to Jesus, and just say, have your way with it. Let's have some fun with this. So thank you, Don. We'll be ready to be in contact with you. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we could go to Mexico co-living next. You guys can unmute there.
Hi, David.
Hi, Angelica.
Yo tengo una pregunta.
I have a question. I don't know how can I can feel my emotions and at the same time be in function. Like, I don't want to stop the emotions with doing things. Because a little while ago I was with the guys in the kitchen cooking, and suddenly I felt such a deep pain in my heart, and I felt that I was suppressing it by doing things to not feel.
Ay, no quiero hacer eso.
I don't want to do that.
Well, I think that's a very good admission that you have. I mean, you were at La Casa and co-living for a while, and it was very intense and healing, but then you traveled for a while, and even with travel, sometimes it's not easy to let the emotions up when you're staying with people, or you're in certain circumstances, and the emotions can be very intense. But there where you are now, I think that's part of the reason you're there, is because somewhere deep in your mind you're giving yourself permission to let some of these intense emotions come up. And if you are in the middle of doing a task in the kitchen, or you're doing something and the feelings are intense and overwhelming, then by all means you just need to step back from whatever you're doing. It's full. It's very full to face the emotions. It's like that storm that they were talking about in the movie we just watched. The main thing is you have to be very gentle with yourself. You are at some level giving yourself permission to be in touch with these emotions right where you are. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be in a place where those emotions can come up and with a feeling of like safety and a feeling of acceptance. That's why people come to co-living, is because they oftentimes have very strong emotions and they haven't been able to deal with them or push them away. So that's the most important thing, and of course you are surrounded by people that have done the same. They've given themselves permission to let the feelings up when they're there, not to try to push them away or deal with them in another place at another time. This is the time. This is the place. And you've given yourself permission to come and move through those emotions. And so I feel like it's very, very important. I was just over there with you yesterday in the Palapa. When you came, you pulled up a seat, and then I could see it on your face. There were very strong emotions that came to you immediately when you sat down. And I'm very grateful that you opened up, and it's so beautiful that even though you don't speak English, you were able to speak what the emotion was to me in English words, which is beautiful too, because it's so much needs to come up. This is the time for the healing around those emotions. So just know that you are so loved and so accepted, and you have many, many mighty companions with you that are there for you, that are there to support you, and just even in prayer and acceptance, it's very, very important. So thank you. Thank you for your willingness. Yeah. Nothing's going wrong, it's all going right. Yeah.
Okay, David, well, we could go to John. You could unmute there.
Hey,
Hi, John.
so are you saying that I can just relax into the moment and not try to do anything? Not try to pray, not try to relax into the moment, not anything. Just, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you just focus on just relaxing into it, then you'll be ready for what is going to come and what will be helpful. It's when we have to think we have to do something to prepare for it or make the healing happen. That's where it can get very stressful, insanely stressful. And sometimes we also, besides having like a push, the ego will try to come in and start analyzing things. And that just makes it worse. That just makes the pressure even more intense. So I am saying that I think to the extent that you can just ease your way, relax your way into it and come as present as you can, that's a perfect thing to do. It's a perfect start for the goodness and the healing that can come. Come just from a welcome, not from a sense of trying to figure it out or analyze it, but just from that almost like a childlike welcome that's in our hearts. Yes.
Okay, David, we have one more hand. We can go to Luz. You can unmute there.
Thank you. I am so happy, David, and so excited. This time around, the movie was a completely different experience for me. I'm so glad that many of the shooting sequences and scenes were exactly the same as Down the Rabbit Hole. Because then I was relaxed. When we saw Down the Rabbit Hole, I was so into the intellectual part of things. I was writing things down and worrying that I could get every single little piece of information and that I was tired by the end of the movie. I mean, maybe the last half hour I was trying to stay awake. I was worn out. But this time around, I was not. And I had so much fun. Not even in the comedies that I've seen with you have I laughed so much. Because I could see how ridiculous the whole human condition is. And how ridiculous all the effort and the whatnot that I've been doing all my life. All my life. It's not 3 or 4 years. Come on. It's quite a chunk of time, whatever that is. But this time I was excited. And there's one word I keep from the whole experience, and it's expectations. As soon as you mentioned expectations, immediately I could see how the whole experience with my husband, number one, was doomed to failure from the before it started. I had this expectation that I could love him and get love from him. None of the two happened. Because I was sure I could change him by loving him so much. I mean, 16, 17, I married at 18. Well, the romantic notions are all over the place. And actually, I could see and experience, not only see, but have the experience. Not only was it doomed to failure, but it was exactly like marrying my mom, which was not loving, wouldn't accept love from us. All the same pattern, just a different puppet, but the same shit. Incredible. And at the same time, I saw that all the experience with husband number two, which was a very happy marriage until he left, was based on expectations. I married this guy because he needed legal papers to stay in the country. He was my friend. Of course, we had some hushy going on between us. I mean, we were lovers, but at some point, he needed this legal status to stay in the country. And because of his history, I knew that it was paramount for this soul. This creature needed to feel safe for a little bit to move on. So I said, when the lawyer said, why don't you two get married? I was like, okay, why not? So I really did it to help someone out, but I was not expecting anything. I was not even expecting to be happy. I was not expecting to live with him 24/7. There were no expectations, and it turned out to be an amazing, loving experience that ended with a huge miracle when he left. And the Course in Miracles appeared in my hands at the same time. So expectations is like something I really, really need to look at closely, because today not only I could see, but the experience, it was simultaneous. I could see these two different settings having different outcomes because there were different expectations from the very beginning. And that was amazing. That was an amazing, joyful experience for me today. And I will keep that as an assignment for me. I mean, look at my expectations in different areas. And another thing is last Sunday, like 5 or 6 in the afternoon, I went outside into my patio where I have an orchard with a huge mango tree and lychees that I've planted, and it's my beautiful prayer meditation spot. And what is my surprise that I see one of my neighbors sitting there happily under my tree with her little table and friends and drinks. And she didn't even bother to say, hey, listen, can I go into the orchard and share with friends? Nothing. Out of the blue, she felt entitled to use my space without letting me know. And it was a shock, and I didn't like it. I could see several things. First, that I get very instinctive when it comes to the physical territory of my house, my land, my garden, my orchard. I get very instinctive. I had not verified that so clearly. So that's something I have to work on and pray and ask for help to let go, because it's ridiculous. I don't own a square certain amount of meat. I don't own anything. I don't know shit, but the feeling is there. It's mine. I paid for it. Come on, get out. So I could see all these attack thoughts. But that's not the biggest thing. The lesson that day was salvation is my only function here, and my part is essential to God's plan for salvation. This happened around 6 o'clock, and 7 o'clock came, 8, 9, 10, 11. I tried to go to bed, and I was so upset. I wasn't at ease. I wasn't happy. I said, okay, now you practice your lesson. Nitty-gritty of things. Do it. It's not a recitation. It's practice. I tell you, it's one of the most ferocious battles with the ego I've ever had in my life. Even worse than cancer, I tell you. I was asking, okay, help me see this in a different way. I tried, okay, I finally got into I am spirit, I am the Holy Son of God, and so is she. Nothing is going on here. And I went back into feeling angry, upset, discomfort, big time. And I knew it was ridiculous, and I knew there was no point to it. And I managed to go into prayer again and be okay for a few seconds. And I mean, this went on and on and on. I don't know for how long. And even though I knew it was not real and it was not helpful, it came back to my mind because I was right. This feeling of I am right is so strong. I didn't really feel the measure, the amount of this. It's very serious. It's very serious. But finally, I managed to go to sleep. I don't know how. I mean, probably because I was so freaking tired. And next day, I kept on with my trying to forgive. And finally, I could do it. Finally, maybe Monday or Tuesday. And now it's gone, you know. But this was a humongous verification that the practice is everything. And that just as today I had this amazing verification of how the transfer of practice moves into life And it's a joyful experience. I want more of that. So thank you for all your help. I love you. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you, Luz. Thank you. It's so beautiful to hear that you just stayed with it. You kept praying and persisted and knew that that was it, the practice, put it into practice. So, well, that's a perfect way to end our day with Luz's witness of really, really staying with it and going for it, and the blessing that we always receive, the gift to ourself we receive when we pray and release any type of grievance, any type of upset that's blocking us from feeling all that love. So, well, as I'm just so honored by how open and transparent all of you have been with the movie, and also during the breakout sessions that I was able to hear about through the facilitators, and now here at the end of the close of the day. It's really an honor, and it's a good, strong witness for everybody to be witness to this transparency, because that's the key. I'm willing to just let go, relax, and be transparent with whatever seems to be arising, and then the blessing comes so strong. So thank you again, and thank you for participating in the movie poll we put out every week, and then we really do just look at those themes and pray to be shown a movie that really will be very helpful in bringing some clarity and light. So it's just an honor to walk together. And this Saturday all-day movie workshop has been so healing. I could feel it coming into the day with our beautiful lesson, forgiveness is the key to happiness, and we have heard lots of witnesses of that love and laughter, and Luz laughing her way through this movie. What a blessing. That rippled out to the whole universe, the laughter. Went from note-taking and concern to happy laughter spreading around the world. So thank you all. Thank you for being here, and I will bid you farewell for now, and send my love and my blessings to you, and then Peter, he will be the one that will bring us to a close today. But I send you all my love.